Alan, very good morning to you. 7 o'clock on today's show. Plaid Cymru defeat Labour in a by-election victory and fend off Reform UK from claiming a seat in the Senate.
Plus, we'll have the goals from a very busy night in European football as Aston Villa and Crystal Palace both suffer shock defeats.
Sport and news to come on Friday, the 24th of October. A by-election humiliation for Labour and a sigh of relief for Plaid Cymru as they seize victory in a seat held by Labour since its creation. But Plaid's win also a blow for Farage, who had pinned his hopes on proving that Reform can convert their lead in the opinion polls into election wins. Keir Starmer holds a coalition of the willing meeting in London to discuss further pressure on Russia, with Volodymyr Zelensky expected to attend. Meanwhile, offended by a TV advert, President Trump pulls out of all trade talks with Canada. There's a major breakthrough in the treatment of MS. Sky News speaks to the first patient in the UK to be treated with CAR-T therapy.
And in sport, Sean Dyche starts life as Nottingham Forest manager with a morale-boosting win against Porto in the Europa League.
It's 7 o'clock. It's a Friday morning. You're watching Breakfast on Sky News. And Plaid Cymru have won the by-election seat in the Senate for Caerphilly for the first time. It's a historic loss for the Labour Party, who have held the Senate seat since its creation, and the Westminster seat for over a century. 72-year-old Lizzie Whittle, who's stood as Plaid candidate 13 times, also saw off a challenge from Reform UK, who had hoped to prove they can turn opinion polls into election victories. Our chief political correspondent, John Craig, reports now on the historic result and how it's set to change the dynamic of Welsh politics.
I give public notice that Lizzie Whittle is duly elected as the member of the Senate for Caerphilly constituency.
Victory for Plaid Cymru after a bruising by-election battle with Nigel Farage's Reform UK, in which Labour's vote collapsed. Partly thanks to tactical voting against reform, 72-year-old Lizzie Whittle won an election in Caerphilly at the 14th attempt.
Listen now, Cardiff, and listen, Westminster. This is Caerphilly and Wales telling you we want a better deal for every corner of Wales. The big parties need to sit up and take notice. Wales, we are at the dawn of new leadership. We are at the dawn of a new beginning.
Reform UK's Claire Powell had been ahead in the polls and tipped to snatch victory.
We started off at a very low start because we were the new kids on the block, and we've run a very good campaign, and I'm very proud of what the team's done.
Labour blamed Reform UK, making immigration a major issue in the campaign for its dismal result.
I think what Starmer needs to do as UK Labour and the UK government and all of his cabinet, what we need to do in Wales under Lyned Morgan, is actually deliver on bread and butter issues that matter to people, that they see around them. Otherwise, all we do is play to the tune of those who want to make every election from here for the next 20 years about immigration and ethnicity.
In the end, this was quite a decisive victory for Plaid Cymru. They defeated Reform UK by almost 4,000 votes, a relatively comfortable win. But it was largely down to tactical voting, because the Labour vote collapsed. Many of their supporters switched to Plaid Cymru, and the votes for the Conservatives, Liberal Democrats and Greens were derisory. Plaid Cymru are celebrating. Reform UK have to think again at how they make progress in Wales. Plaid will hope this result is a springboard to becoming the governing party in Wales next year. For Reform UK, it's a setback in its bid to make inroads in Wales. And for Keir Starmer, it's a disaster in what was previously a Labour stronghold. John Craig, Sky News, Caerphilly.
Amanda's here to discuss this further. It's an interesting result because obviously Plaid, an incredible historic victory, but you can also kind of split it that for them there's now challenges as well, because was this actually a vote for Plaid or was this a protest vote against Reform or Labour? And then you can look at Labour and go, well, you've had a historic loss. And you can look at Reform and say, well, you were leading the polls and you've not succeeded either. It's an interesting way to split this one. I'm not entirely sure where the victory necessarily truly lies.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very good point. Clearly, Plaid benefited from tactical voting, as we were just hearing from John there. But at the same time, it really is an extraordinary win for Lindsay Whittle at his 14th attempt. I mean, absolutely amazing. Staying power. Yeah, quite. And a comfortable win too, a majority of 4,000 in the end, and calling on both Cardiff and Westminster to sit up and listen, effectively saying Wales has been ignored by national politics in Wales and the rest of the UK. And I think that's a message that will be heard loud and clear, really. But for Reform, it is disappointing. They'd thrown the kitchen sink at this. Nigel Farage visited 3 times, and clearly they didn't go as well as they had hoped. At the same time, still quite an extraordinary surge for them, given that last time around they had fewer than 500 votes, and this time more than 12,000. And I think they're still hoping that they'll be able to build on the kind of ground game that they've built up there for the Senate elections in May. And both Reform and Plaid suggesting that they could win at those elections coming up. And really, I think fundamentally, this is just the shattering defeat of Labour in a place that they have been so strong for more than a century. Now to be relegated to a kind of distant third place, 11% of the vote, and if that was replicated in May, then they would lose the Senate. Of course, they'd be completely wiped out there. And as it is at the moment, there's kind of a more immediate political issue for them, as well as the kind of effort to rebuild in 6 months that they've got until then. But they're now 2 votes short of a majority in the Senate. Previously, it was 1 vote, and they were able to rely on a Liberal Democrat to help get their policies through. Now they've got a budget coming up in February. They're 2 votes short, so that will have implications there in Wales. But more broadly, yes, you can't extrapolate too much from a by-election. We know that, of course. But at the same time, it really underlines quite how much the old political party system really has changed so dramatically. And Labour need to watch out both for reform, but also clearly the threat from nationalists and the left as well.
Amanda, appreciate it. Thank you so much. Let's turn our attention from Caerphilly to the coalition of the willing, shall we? European leaders arriving in London for a meeting of the coalition today discussing support for Ukraine. The Prime Minister will host leaders from Denmark, the Netherlands and also NATO. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky also expected to attend. They're going to discuss boosting military support for Ukraine, plans to curb Russian oil and gas exports. They're expected to be given the green light. Our details are going to come from our Siobhan Robbins in Brussels.
After a difficult day last week in Washington, D.C., a warm welcome in Europe. President Zelensky arriving in Brussels to positive news. New sanctions, including measures targeting Russian liquefied natural gas for the first time. So could this move Ukraine closer to peace?
Do you think a ceasefire is still possible?
Ceasefire is possible, of course. And I think all of us need ceasefire. But we need more pressure on Russia.
On Wednesday, Trump helped pile on that pressure with sanctions on 2 Russian oil giants, his patience with Putin suddenly wearing thin.
This should be easier to do, but the level of hatred between Zelensky and Putin is very substantial.
This is the first time since his re-election President Trump's imposed direct costs on Russia. But Putin was defiant.
This is an unfriendly act towards Russia. It's obvious. It doesn't help strengthen Russian-American relations, which have only just begun to recover. Such action by the US administration certainly damages Russia-US relations. It's an attempt to exert pressure on Russia. But no self-respecting country and self-respecting people make any decisions under pressure.
But even with the sanctions, peace feels as distant as ever. Russia continues to hammer Ukraine and isn't budging on its maximalist demands. And while Kyiv hits Russian refineries, they're still missing the US long-range Tomahawk missiles, which would allow deeper strikes. Zelensky's missile mission to the US capital last Friday reportedly descended into a shouting match.
Mr. President, can you tell us how it went in DC last Friday?
But when asked about the clash, Ukraine's leader remained diplomatic.
The result of this meeting, we have sanctions on Russian energy. We don't have meeting in Hungary without Ukraine. And we have not yet tomahawks. That's it. This is the result. I think not bad.
In contrast to the volatility across the Atlantic, Europe is something of a safe haven, consistent, reliable. But despite that, the spectre of President Trump is ever present. And that's not the only headache for Zelensky. The EU's still arguing about loaning billions of frozen Russian assets to Ukraine, a windfall which would seriously boost Kyiv's war chest. Siobhan Robbins, Sky News, Brussels.
We will also hear from the Spanish Finance Minister later in the programme here on Breakfast. Now, Thomas is here for a good news story, hey?
Yes, this is a groundbreaking trial which is starting in London today, and that is trying to slow or halt the progression of multiple sclerosis, a disease that 150,000 people in the UK have. And it's a one-off treatment that tries to reset the immune system. Doctors are really optimistic, and our camera's there to see the first patient being treated.
OK, I'll start.
Every day, Emily wakes up unsure whether she'll be able to stand. She has multiple sclerosis. 3 times she's had relapses that meant she was unable to move her legs. And with her dad now in a wheelchair, also because of MS, she jumped at the chance to be the first person in the UK to test a new treatment that could slow or even stop the disease. And it uses her own cells that have been tweaked in the lab.
The thought of being in a wheelchair and not being able to chase after my children or not being able to walk up and down the stairs every day is something that I want to avoid at all costs. So I'm kind of subjecting myself to this. But I know in the long run, I want to stop it before it has a chance to stop me.
Multiple sclerosis is caused by rogue cells in the immune system turning on the body, attacking the protective coating of nerves in the brain and spinal cord and causing blurred vision or other disabling relapses. But doctors at University College London hospitals are leading a new trial of CAR T-cell therapy. They removed some of Emily's blood, then isolated some of her killer T-cells, which are normally part of the body's immune defences against disease. These were genetically modified in the lab, weaponising them to attack the rogue B cells instead. Now they're being infused back into Emily. The hope is they'll wipe them out, preventing further damage to the nerves. The doctor behind the treatment says it's one of the most significant developments in her clinical lifetime.
If we can intervene with something that can induce an immune reset, which is what we think this therapy has the capacity to do, it essentially reaches deeply into all the areas of the body where the disease-causing cells are, eradicates them, and then it's almost like flicking a switch and you get the recovery of just normal B cells.
CAR T-cell therapy is already successfully used in some aggressive blood cancers, and there are promising results in treating a disease called lupus, which, like MS, is caused by rogue cells in the immune system.
There will be just 18 patients in this first global trial. More studies will be needed, and it's far too soon to be calling this a potential cure. But doctors are optimistic that if all goes well, it could stop MS in its tracks.
Emily is a biology teacher. She understands that there are potential risks with an experimental treatment, but she's convinced by the science that underpins it.
What's my options here? I could just let this disease take over and we could wait and see, and I might be lucky and nothing happened to me, or I might have a massive relapse next week and never be able to walk again. Are we willing to take that chance? And I think we've come to the conclusion that no, we're not willing to take that chance, and that we have to trust science and trust medicine to kind of do its job.
There are 150,000 people with MS in the UK. Treatments are improving, but doctors say a one-off therapy that targets the underlying cause of the disease could be a game changer. Thomas Moore, Sky News at the University College London hospitals.
There's a temptation to think that it's all a bit doom and gloom out there at times, and then you see stories like that and science like that and improvements like that it's just remarkable. I guess always the big question with these is, when do you go from Emily to 150,000 people?
Yeah, so this is a really potent treatment. It works on the immune system, and things can go wrong. They can have toxic effects, unpredictable effects on the immune system. So they're going really slowly. That's why this first trial is just looking at 18 patients around the world, and it's primarily there for safety. They want to be sure that then scale that up, give it many more, and that's the point that you start looking at the effectiveness, and beyond that, then it's a clinical rollout with more patients benefiting. But the story with lupus, this other autoimmune disease I was talking about in that report, is slightly ahead of this, and the results there are looking very promising indeed. So fingers crossed.
Fantastic. Thomas, good to have you with us. Appreciate it. Thank you so much. Time to return to the... we'll bring you different pictures, and we'll bring you more on that story actually later in the programme. But it's time to return to the by-election in Caerphilly now, where Plaid Cymru's Lindsay Whittle has claimed victory. Let's speak to the Cabinet Office Minister Nick Thomas-Symonds for the Labour Party. Good to have you with us. I appreciate you sharing a Friday morning. Are you licking your wounds, or are you mortally wounded when you came third in the by-election?
Well, look, firstly, very good to join you this morning. But look, before we come to that discussion, important discussion on the result, could I just say a word about Hevin David's family today? They have been in my thoughts, not just today, but in recent days as well. And nobody would have wanted to have had a by-election in the tragic circumstances that we did. And also a word for the Welsh Labour candidate, Richard Tunnicliffe, who, against that very difficult backdrop, ran a very positive and dignified campaign. In terms of the result, of course, I'm not shying away from how disappointing the result is. I went to Caerphilly, as you can imagine. It's not too far from where I'm speaking to you from this morning here in Torfaen on a number of occasions. And what I found on the doorsteps was a real desire for more change, a frustration about the pace of change that was coming through to me very strongly when I was speaking to people. I think that's been reflected in the result. But by-elections are always difficult for incumbent parties, and this one was certainly no different.
You put a fair bit of effort, I think it's fair to say, in countering and challenging reform, maybe less so in Plaid. What went wrong? What was the error from Labour's perspective in terms of the messaging? You say people want change, but they want a different version of change to the one you're offering.
Well, what was coming up on the doorstep was the everyday pressures that people are facing, both in terms of their living standards, making ends meet, but also, of course, public services, which here in Wales for 14 years of Conservative government at Westminster were being starved of cash. Now, we have made a very significant start as a UK government in delivering that change, the largest financial settlement in the history of devolution, which is now feeding into lowering NHS waiting lists here in Wales, to the continuation of the 5p fuel duty cut to 150,000 workers benefiting from rises in the national minimum wage and the national living wage, investment in rail infrastructure, and also, and I say this from the South Wales valleys where I'm speaking to you, the investment in coal tip maintenance and safety, which is really important here. So the two Labour governments at either end of the M4 have been working together, but there's no doubt at all that people want us to move even more quickly with delivering that change. We've heard that message on thousands of doorsteps. We treat the result with humility. We are listening, and we will now seek to demonstrate in the 6 months that are left before the Senedd election that delivery, not just in word, but in deed as well.
I wonder then, based on everything you've just described and discussed, whether you agree with the Deputy First Minister of Wales, who says that Westminster has paid too much time and attention on migration and not enough on the issues that really affect people up and down the country, the issues of cost of living, the issues of just getting by day to day. That was the feedback, if not criticism, slightly from the Deputy First Minister, was that too much time had been spent on the issues that Reform are owning and not actually on the issues that are, on a day-to-day, minute-by-minute basis, affecting the electorate.
Well, no, we're focusing on all those things. We are focusing on the concerns that the electorate are putting to us, the concern about people in small boats coming across the English Channel. That's why we are putting in measures to seek to tackle that, by the way, would be happening far more quickly if Reform and the Conservatives were not voting against our borders bill in Parliament. But we have been, in addition, of course, hugely focused on living standards and public services. That's why the Welsh Government has the largest settlement that it's ever had in the history of devolution. That's why we are delivering the benefits that I've referred to. And of course, investment in communities here in Wales. In Pride of Place, we announced recently additional funds for communities with powers for communities to spend that money on their priorities. So it is focusing on all those issues that matter to people. And that's exactly what we're going to continue to seek to demonstrate over the next 6 months.
We're a little tight on time, so apologies for just kind of keeping moving on. I just, a final thought with regards to the Welsh Parliament. You are 2 seats short now of a majority. Previously, you were able to maybe work at times with the Liberal Democrat. Who will you now work with to try and achieve that agenda? Which deals will you do? Which parties, which individuals, which independents will you work with and ally yourselves with to try and get that across the line? Because at the moment, you are short of that majority.
Well, look, in the devolution age, that is a matter for Eluned Morgan and the Welsh Government, not for me. What I certainly know is that the Welsh Government will be behaving responsibly on the forthcoming budget. The Welsh Government will be putting public services first. It will be putting the well-being of the Welsh people first. It is then up to the opposition parties how they respond to that. But the Welsh people will be watching how the other parties behave in respect of the budget. But I've no doubt that the Welsh Government will continue to work with the UK Government on delivery, as we have been over the last 15, 16 months, in the 6 months up to the Senedd election that we have remaining.
With that in mind, you mentioned the budget. We need to pick up on that because the promise from the Labour Party, from the government, was no raises in taxation, no tax rises for working people. If the front pages of some of the papers are to be believed, the Chancellor's in talks to increase income tax. Is that to be believed?
We stand by our manifesto pledges on VAT, on national insurance and on income tax. We have protected people's pay slips. That's precisely what we've been doing over the last 15, 16 months. So we stand by those pledges. But in terms of broader questions for the budget, certainly those are a matter for the Chancellor. And I certainly won't be drawn on individual tax measures. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to do that or helpful for me to do that ahead of a budget. But certainly this government has stood by working people and will continue to do that.
So you stand by those pledges. So the reports on the front pages of the paper are incorrect then. There will be no rise in income tax at the budget.
I see lots of speculation about what might or might not be in the budget. The only person who will really know that, frankly, is going to be the Chancellor herself. I know the work that she's doing in preparation for the budget, but directly in answer to your question, our manifesto pledges were made and they stand.
So they stand. So we will watch very closely in a few weeks' time for that. Just finally, Coalition of the Willing meeting this afternoon in London. What should the public expect from the United Kingdom in terms of its continued support for Ukraine?
So the Prime Minister will continue his work leading the coalition of the willing with other European leaders. This is all about ramping up the pressure on Putin. Putin is the block to peace and advancement of peace talks in Ukraine. So what you're going to see is an attempt further to take Russian oil and gas off the world market, because it's the profits from those that are funding Putin's war machine, finish the job on Russian sovereign assets that have been seized so we can redirect that money to Ukraine's defences, but also making sure we are going into the winter providing Ukraine with the long-range missile capacity that it needs, which will also, of course, be very good for jobs here in the United Kingdom. But fundamentally, what we are seeking to do is to ramp up the pressure on Putin. I think you'll see the Prime Minister leading on that today.
Will the Prime Minister be prepared to ramp up the pressure on some of our European allies? Because there is that goal across NATO now to increase defence spending to 5%. That's a mixture of spending mechanisms. But arriving in the UK today is the Spanish Finance Minister. Spain barely at shy of 2% at the moment. And so, you know, the United Kingdom is putting a shift in to ensure that funding is made and invested into the armed forces. Other NATO allies are not doing so. Will the Prime Minister have those tough conversations with other countries to say, look, this needs to be pan-Europe, pan-NATO to really ensure the defence of this continent?
Well, he's already been making that case about the whole of Europe stepping up. I've been accompanying him to some of the summits. I was with him at the European Political Community Summit in Copenhagen earlier this month. So the Prime Minister will continue to make the case about Europe collectively stepping up. And that point is being made because it is about our continent's security. Security, peace, defending Ukraine, which this country has been doing in recent years, is absolutely vital for our own security. So yes, absolutely, the Prime Minister will continue to make that case for the whole continent stepping up on defence. It's hugely important that he's there doing it.
Joining us live, Nick Thomas-Symonds, good to have you with us. Appreciate your time. Thank you. Should we talk about some sport?
We shall. Do you know what I think is the funniest thing about some of these Europa League fixtures is when you see all the fixtures laid out, and you know it'll say Nottingham Forest, Porto, run-of-the-mill stuff, and then the Villa one is go ahead Villa, because their team that they played is called Go Ahead.
Yes, yeah,
that's just
Go Ahead Villa.
Funny when you see it written down. Go Ahead Eagles. There's no room for the Eagles, so it just says Go Ahead. Go Ahead Villa. Go ahead and don't win that match, which they're going to be kicking themselves today. We're going to have the goals come. It was very unfortunate. The first part of the week, Champions League, full of goals, lost,
5-1.
and so many wins as well. Everyone won apart from Spurs, pretty much. Not so positive last night, pretty much a mixed bag of results. Loads of goals though as well. And a very busy night. We'll show you the misses. Villa have a moment to forget from the penalty spot. Wasn't a great night for new Rangers manager Danny Roll. He apologised to the travelling fans after losing 3-0 in Norway. And the race heats up quite literally in Formula One, as both McLaren drivers try not to crash into each other at this weekend's Mexican Grand Prix. It's a priority.
Very good morning to you. Gareth Barlow with you on Sky News. Let's remind you of the top stories this morning. Plaid Cymru have won the by-election in the Senate seat of Caerphilly for the first time ever. The results saw the Welsh Nationalist Party oust Labour from a traditional stronghold in South Wales and fend off a challenge from Reform. A meeting of the Coalition of the Willing will discuss support for Ukraine and sanctions for Russia today. Sir Keir Starmer will host leaders from Denmark, the Netherlands and NATO, with Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky also expected to attend. President Trump says he's immediately ending all trade negotiations with Canada. The move came in response to TV adverts which were critical of tariffs, which Trump described as egregious behaviour. A groundbreaking treatment which could halt the progress of multiple sclerosis and potentially lead to a cure has been used in the UK for the first time. The treatment, known as CAR-T therapy, is already used to fight aggressive forms of blood cancer. Time to bring you more on the meeting of the Coalition of the Willing, with Sir Keir Starmer calling on allies to increase Ukraine's supply of long-range weapons. The Prime Minister due to host leaders, including Volodymyr Zelensky, later today in London. Joining us now is the Ukrainian MP, Alexei Goncharenko. Good to have you with us. I appreciate you making time for us here on Sky News. I'm interested for your reaction in recent days, a real kind of pace about the sanctions being applied against Russia, firstly from the White House with regards to those two big oil firms, and then also that 19th round of sanctions from the EU. How welcome is it that you're getting that financial support in terms of putting the pressure on Moscow and the Kremlin?
It's definitely absolutely vital, and we welcome the fact that finally, for the first time, President Trump's administration imposed direct sanctions against Russia. And this is serious sanctions against Russian biggest oil producers. So it's really very important, and it's also very symbolic. It shows the change of attitude towards situation in Ukraine and Russian war of aggression against Ukraine. It looks like finally President Trump absolutely clearly realized that all these red carpets to Putin, they just don't work. But sanctions, more sanctions, and more sanctions will work, especially if it will be accompanied with the long-range capabilities for Ukrainian army to hit targets inside Russia. So that will be a real chance for peace, because Russia understands only one language of strength.
You talk about the long-range weapons. There was a hope that Volodymyr Zelensky would be able to secure Tomahawks from Washington. That appears to be on ice, frozen for the moment. There are, of course, European countries that could provide more capacity in that regard. Germany, for example, it's got Taurus missiles, reluctant to supply them, but could do so. What do you hope that the Coalition of the Willing, this meeting of European nations and some other allies, might be able to provide the Ukrainian leader in the next few hours?
You know, I'm very thankful for all support Ukraine is receiving. But I should be frank with you, Coalition of Willing sometimes looks like coalition of talking. And we need really decisions and bold decisions. We need long-range capabilities. We need season of Russian frozen assets. And it's nothing to, it's nothing to talk about here. It's time to act. It's time to do something. And it will also push the United States of America to do more, because it's hard to argue with Trump when he is saying, okay, we are imposing sanctions on India because India is buying Russian oil. But why Europe is not imposing sanctions on India because India is buying Russian oil? Why Europe continues to buy Russian liquefied natural gas? Why Europe continues to buy Russian oil? And that's the question. So Europe shouldn't just address United States of America, just saying, do something. It looks quite ridiculous, because Europe should do something itself. So I welcome again the new sanctions, but I want to see more weapons provided to Ukraine. It's time. The time is already here. The winter is close. Here in Ukraine, situation is super difficult because Russia destroyed big part of Ukrainian energy complex finally after almost 4 years of bombings. I really don't know how we will get through this winter. So it's time to act now, not just to talk.
You talk about the fact it's time, and it strikes me, and you will be all too aware of it, that throughout the course of this conflict, people like yourself, your leader, have argued and requested and needed F-16s or tanks or long-range weaponry or other assets, and you have to spend so long asking for it, and eventually allies have come through, but sometimes comes through in a matter of 6 months, 9 months, even a year later. How do you feel about the fact that sometimes you're having to battle so hard for the equipment, and then eventually it does arrive, but then the cycle seems to repeat itself with the next request and the next request?
Yeah, I will explain you how we feel about this. We pay for this by lives, hundreds of lives, thousands of lives of our best people. And these lives are not endless, unfortunately. So this cycle, which appears and appears and continues, but at some moment, there will be no people who will use this weapon. I hope this moment will not come, but this is the threat. This is the challenge that we have. And that's why, and also don't forget that Russia is not just blind people who are sitting and just waiting for something. They are preparing already to intercept tomahawks. They are preparing for a long time to do something with Tauruses and so on and so on. So when finally such equipment arrives, unfortunately, it's often too late because Russia is already ready. That is the reality. So we need to be effective and quick. And it's time to do this now, because I really don't know for how long this war should continue. We need peace as soon as possible here in Ukraine. We agree to stop the war, the hostilities on the current lines. So it's time to push Russia for this, because I don't know what else we should wait for.
Joining us live from Kiev, Alexei Goncharenko. Good to have you with us. Appreciate you sharing your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, lots of talk there about the president, and the president's been talking, saying that he's ending trade talks with Canada. It's over TV adverts. The recent ads protest US tariffs that have been slammed by the president on his social media as egregious behaviour. Let's get the details from Martha Kellner.
Canada is one of the US's closest trading partners, and so this represents a major, in fact, a total breakdown in negotiations over a trade deal. And some might say it also shows just how fickle the US President Donald Trump can be when it comes to these negotiations, because all of this has broken down over one TV advert. It's an advert which was paid for by the province of Ontario, which is a region of Canada, and it features the voice of Ronald Reagan, a former US president, US Republican president, talking negatively about tariffs, obviously in a completely different context. It was taken from a radio presentation in 1987, but the advert was designed to provoke a reaction. And it's clearly poked the bear, because Donald Trump tonight taking to Truth Social, he wrote, the Ronald Reagan Foundation has announced that Canada has fraudulently used an advertisement which is fake, featuring Ronald Reagan speaking negatively about tariffs. And based on their egregious behaviour, all trade negotiations with Canada are hereby terminated. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And he signs off that note, President DJT. Now, Donald Trump has imposed double-digit tariffs on many Canadian exports. He's also repeatedly suggested that Canada should be the 51st state of the US. And obviously, as you might imagine, that has prompted negative reaction in Canada. I've spent some time there. I've seen US products being pulled off the shelves in certain cities in Canada. You know, they're selling Canadianos instead of Americanos. They're cancelling trips that they'd planned, some Canadian people, to the United States. But the US is a hugely important trading partner, the most important trading partner to Canada. And the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, has been desperate to try and come to a deal with Donald Trump over trade. He's been trying to repair that relationship. He was in the White House a couple of weeks ago, and just last night he was joking on a TV interview about a baseball game between the Toronto Blue Jays, a Canadian team, and the LA Dodgers, obviously a US team. Well, you'd imagine that his next interaction with Donald Trump, given this news, may not be quite so light-hearted.
Martha Kellner there for us. And just a reminder, of course, Trump 100, the podcast, gives you all you need to know from the United States, all of the details from across the country and from the heart of Washington, D.C. Get it wherever you get your podcasts, typically. It is 39 minutes past 7. It's a Friday morning. Let's talk about a watchdog warning significant challenges remain in how police tackle child sexual exploitation and grooming gangs. It comes as 5 abuse survivors tell the Prime Minister they will only continue working with grooming gangs. The inquiry, if Jess Phillips remains a safeguarding minister, despite calls from 4 other survivors for her to quit. Amelia Harper joins us now. Tell us more about the concerns from this watchdog.
Yeah, so, of course, as you're saying there's been a lot of discussion over the last week about grooming gangs, but now the police watchdog has found that police really need to do more to tackle this issue. And a new report has been brought out by the Inspectorate for Police and Fire Services. And what it found was that there were 2 main issues. The first was mainly to do with how police collate data on this topic. And secondly, there's a lack of national consensus about this issue. It found that over half of police forces are not including data from other agencies, so places like charities or social services. It also found that the Home Office and Department for Education are not using the definition of group-based child sexual exploitation as set out in the inquiry into child sexual abuse. This was an inquiry that happened over 7 years, ending in 2022, and it looked at how institutions across England and Wales failed to protect children from abuse. This is different to the national inquiry that's being set up by the government at the moment. That's specifically looking at grooming gangs. Some of the positives from the report, nearly all police forces did adopt this inquiry's definition of group-based child sexual exploitation. Secondly, specialist officers were more likely to identify cases, and language that blames victims, victim-blaming language, was improved, less likely to be used. Responding to this report, the Home Office has said that it's put almost £10 million into tackling this issue, to help police forces tackle this issue, and that they are defining what they're calling organised networks in their policies. But of course, this comes within the context of the government trying to set up this national inquiry into grooming gangs at the moment. It has been turbulent, Gareth, I think it's fair to say. 2 candidates to chair it have quit. 4 victims on the survivors panel have also quit, been calling on the safeguarding minister, Jess Phillips, to resign. The Prime Minister, though, said he has full faith in her.
Amelia, appreciate the update. Thank you so much. Just a reminder as well, in the latest episode of Electoral Dysfunction, Harriet Harman's been telling our political editor, Beth Rigby, why the grooming gangs inquiry is in such disarray.
It seems to always be the case that when people have been horribly failed by the state and punished by the state after those failings, and it's very difficult to trust them, there's no question that they think, we've got an inquiry, great, let's all fall in behind that. You know, it's inevitable that they should be utterly suspicious and untrusting. And I think that really very many public inquiries have started in this way. I remember the start of the Grenfell inquiry. Those people who'd seen their friends and neighbours burnt to death in a block of flats were not happy about the original chair that was appointed and protested. And again, there had to be discussion. And Doreen and Neville Lawrence, their son Stephen, was murdered in the street, and there was a complete failure of the police to investigate because he was a black young man and murdered by white men, so there was no proper police investigation. And Doreen and Neville Lawrence were failed in the worst possible way. So why should they believe it when the Home Secretary says, we're going to set up an inquiry?
Well, scan the QR code on the screen right now to listen to that podcast with Beth, Harriet and Ruth. Plenty more from the team there. Let's talk about books, shall we? And the actress and author Reese Witherspoon, who runs one of the most successful book clubs in the world, as you'll well be aware, has now turned her hand to writing a novel herself. Our arts entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer caught up with her and her co-author about their thriller, Gone Before Goodbye.
It feels really deeply personal because usually as an actor, I walk into other people's worlds and it's already set up and I can bring my part. But this was like creating the whole world with Harlan, and just from everything beginning to end feels very personal.
We live in an age where celebrities have lots of ghost-written books out there.
I said to her for day one, it's only going to be you and me. We are not, there's no third person in here. I don't do that. So it's just every word you see comes from Reese and me.
He set the tone of all of it. He was like, if we're going to do this, it's going to be at a really high level because people are going to expect, they expect a lot from him, they expect a lot from me. So our bar was really high, but I think we were also excited by the challenge.
Well, pretty cool to have Reese on the programme, and if you want to hear more and watch more, you can see the full interview. If you scan the QR code on your screen, you can get even more Reese.
Do you watch Reese on the morning show?
I don't watch Reese on the morning show.
I watch it because I like to compare morning show to morning show.
Are you about
it's nothing like.
Are you about to tell me that Reese Witherspoon is more glamorous than I am?
Only a little bit, but only a bit. Just not. Okay. You can raise your game and you'll be the same.
I'll take the note. It's fine. Raise your game.
Well, you know what? This morning, Villa will be thinking, why didn't we raise it just a little bit more against Go Ahead, which is, I think is a very silly name for a football team.
Although if they raised that penalty any further, it would have gone even further past the bar.
Yeah, this is true. There were a few disappointing results last night, and I think some teams will be really kicking themselves. But you know what? It's a league. It's a fairly long league. You're not going to win everything in it. But, yeah, there were a few disappointments last night, a few misses. But for Sean Dyche, a return to Nottingham Forest, and that must have felt amazing to have played there as a much younger man, then go back as manager, a full circle moment. And it was a good night as well.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report. Sky Business sponsors this report.
Still to come?
Yeah, still to come on The Breakfast Show. A little bit more sport for you after that stunning victory at the Euros. Seems ages ago now, but it wasn't. Lionesses get set for kick-off against Brazil. We'll catch up with a former Lioness, Ellen White, next.
Liberation Day.
By popular demand, here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it.
Can you tell us who you're looking for?
Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal?
Not like you said it.
From the UK?
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
It was 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shot's rang out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Join us wherever you get your podcast.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
All alcohol products, not just wine, will have labels warning of liver disease and the link to fatal cancers.
Is it crazy? It's an industry worth around €14 billion a year. That's why Italy sees this Irish plan as such a threat. It's always instructive and occasionally entertaining to hear what Donald Trump has to say on the issue of Brexit.
She's got her own way of doing it, that's okay.
The job takes me to every corner of this island.
The rioting stemmed from a horrific daytime stabbing attack at a primary school in the city centre.
The scale of the rioting and the destruction it caused is pretty much unprecedented here in Dublin. Jerry, any comment on the judge's decisions? Do you feel vindicated, Jerry? This is the end, the somewhat chaotic end, of a 52-day trial.
Micheál Martin could be set to head back to government with the Taoiseach Simon Harris.
Are you confident that you can now return as Taoiseach?
I'm cautiously optimistic and excited.
A mystery press conference hastily called. Leo Varadkar strode out and didn't disappoint.
I am resigning as President and Leader of Fine Gael effective today.
The people here sometimes feel they're somewhat neglected by the Irish government, to the extent that this place is sometimes known as the Forgotten County.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks, but none have ever been found.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland. Sky News, get the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Welcome back to Sky News Breakfast. It's Friday morning. Now, the Lionesses are going to play Brazil this weekend. It's their first match since their stunning victory at the Euros in July. And ahead of Saturday's fixture in Manchester, the team will be celebrating their success. Taking part in those celebrations will be former Lioness Ellen White, and she joins us now. Good morning to you, Ellen. I suppose it's going to be like a bit of a roadshow coming up for the Lionesses to take the trophy around the country, play different teams, get back together again. I mean, tell us about the weekend. It's in Manchester. They're playing Brazil, who will host the next Women's World Cup. They're quite highly ranked as well. It should be a good match apart from anything, but what's going to happen? Big celebration.
Good morning, firstly. How are you? No, thanks for having me on. Yeah, no, I'm really excited. Obviously, the first match for the Lionesses since they've won back-to-back Euro titles. Obviously, we all remember that amazing game in Basel. I was there. It was absolutely phenomenal. So, yeah, it's an amazing homecoming for the Lionesses to showcase their trophy and also to be in front of their fans at home at the Etihad Stadium, firstly on Saturday, and then in Derby as well. So, yeah, it's an amazing showcase for fans to come and support and just kind of see the Lionesses in the flesh as well if they weren't able to get out in Switzerland. So, yeah, it's going to be a really amazing few days for them. And I'm really excited to be part of that and be there on Saturday as well.
In many ways, it's difficult being part of top-level sport, isn't it? Because you win something and then you immediately move on. You know, all the girls have gone back to their clubs and their WSL season has started. And I suppose, you know, Serena as well will have one eye on the future when she plays these friendly matches. Do you think that? Do you think she will, you know, try out some maybe new faces with a thought to the future? Or is she going to just give the fans what they want and play all the bangers?
I think, Serena's always got something up her sleeve, hasn't she? I'm sure, all the Lionesses that were part of that Euros trophy win, apart from the 3 that are obviously injured, will be there at the game. And whether they're on the pitch or not, they will be celebrated. But yeah, these games are a chance for her to try maybe something different, maybe some youth coming through formation, something a bit different. It's kind of a free hit, really, against some amazing top international teams with Brazil and Australia that they face. But yeah, I think for the fans, it's an amazing opportunity to come and see the Lionesses, especially in the north part of the country in Manchester and also Derby. And there's some tickets left as well. So if people head over to the England football website or wembleystadium.com, they can come and watch the Lionesses for themselves.
We're just looking at pictures there, Ellen, of the parade, which I was at the parade, and it was it was a really emotional sort of day, and the vast numbers that turned out to say well done to the Lionesses. Do you think that victory and those scenes as well has helped move the dial of women's football a little bit more? I mean, we've just seen, wages raised, base wages raised in the WSL this season, so that players over a certain age at least earn £40,000 now. We've seen footballers being transferred for 1.4 million. I mean, it's not really fast, but the money in it is creeping up a bit. Is that all because of this?
No, I totally agree. Yeah, it is definitely creeping up, and the scenes that you're seeing there are just absolutely incredible to see where women's football, from the start to where it is now, 65,000 people watching in the parade, and obviously it's amazing for our sport to be ensuring that women are able to be supported and be professional and be able to have that minimum wage is really important. Being in safe environments, feeling wanted, have a community. And I think that's so important.
I'm so sorry to cut across. We are running out of time, but thank you so much this morning. It's going to be a great weekend for the Lionesses again.
I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories.
This is insane.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first.
Very good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock. On today's show, Plaid Cymru defeat Labour in a by-election victory and fend off Reform UK from claiming a seat in the Senate.
Plus, we'll have all the goals from a very busy night in European football as Aston Villa and Crystal Palace both suffer shock defeats.
Let's do it. It's Friday, the 24th of October.
A by-election humiliation for Labour here in Caerphilly, but celebrations for Plaid Cymru after they seized victory in a seat held by Labour since it was created.
Plaid's win is also a blow for Farage, who had pinned his hopes on proving that Reform can convert their lead in the opinion polls into election wins. Keir Starmer holds a coalition of the willing meeting in London today to discuss further pressure on Russia. Volodymyr Zelensky is expected to attend. Offended by TV advert, President Trump pulls out of all trade talks with Canada. A major breakthrough in the treatment of MS. Sky News speaks to the first patient in the UK to be treated with CAR-T therapy.
And in sports, Sean Dyche started life as Nottingham Forest manager with a morale-boosting win against Porto in the Europa League.
Very good morning to you. Thank you for watching Sky News this morning. Plaid Cymru have won the by-election in the Senate seat of Caerphilly for the first time. A historic loss for the Labour Party, who'd held the Senate seat since its creation, and the Westminster seat for over a century. 72-year-old Lindsay Whittle, who's stood as a Plaid candidate 13 times, also saw off a challenge from Reform UK, who had hoped to prove they can turn opinion polls into election victories. As our chief political correspondent John Craig now reports, the historic result is set to change the dynamic of Welsh politics.
I give public notice that Lindsay Whittle is duly elected as the member of the Senate for Caerphilly constituency.
Victory for Plaid Cymru after a bruising by-election battle with Nigel Farage's Reform UK, in which Labour's vote collapsed. Partly thanks to tactical voting against Reform, 72-year-old Lindsay Whittle won an election in Caerphilly at the 14th attempt.
Listen now, Cardiff, and listen, Westminster. This is Caerphilly and Wales telling you we want a better deal for every corner of Wales. The big parties need to sit up and take notice. Wales, we are at the dawn of new leadership. We are at the dawn of a new beginning.
Reform UK's Claire Powell had been ahead in the polls and tipped to snatch victory.
We started off at a very low start because we were the new kids on the block, and we've run a very good campaign, and I'm very proud of what the team's done.
Labour blamed Reform UK, making immigration a major issue in the campaign for its dismal result.
I think what Starmer needs to do as UK Labour and the UK government and all of his cabinet, what we need to do in Wales under Lyned Morgan, is actually deliver on bread and butter issues that matter to people, that they see around them. Otherwise, all we do is play to the tune of those who want to make every election from here for the next 20 years about immigration and ethnicity.
In the end, this was quite a decisive victory for Plaid Cymru. They defeated Reform UK by almost 4,000 votes, a relatively comfortable win. But it was largely down to tactical voting, because the Labour vote collapsed. Many of their supporters switched to Plaid Cymru, and the votes for the Conservatives, Liberal Democrats and Greens were derisory. Plaid Cymru are celebrating. Reform UK have to think again at how they make progress in Wales. Plaid will hope this result is a springboard to becoming the governing party in Wales next year. For Reform UK, it's a setback in its bid to make inroads in Wales. And for Keir Starmer, it's a disaster in what was previously a Labour stronghold. John Craig, Sky News, Caerphilly.
Well, John is in Caerphilly. And John, what does this mean for Labour?
It's a disaster for Labour because this is a seat they'd held in Westminster since, end of the First World War, really, more than 100 years. The Welsh devolution started in 1999. Labour held Caerphilly all that time as well, 25, 26 years. This was once as impregnable stronghold as this castle. This castle, of course, was besieged and captured by Oliver Cromwell in 1645 in the English Civil War. Well, Nigel Farage hoped that he would capture Caerphilly. In the end, despite a big effort from Reform UK, spent lots of money. Mr Farage came here 3 times, including on polling day, but they fell short by just under 4,000 votes. So Labour really have to regroup and think how on earth they are going to try and recover, with big elections coming up in the Senate next year. And the Plaid Cymru are really confident they can take control of the Senate for the first time. It's been Labour since 1999. Mr Farage will have to work out how he makes inroads in Wales. He had been very optimistic, of course, of doing well in Wales in those elections next year. Mr Farage will no doubt say, well, we came very close. We came, as his candidate was explaining to me last night, they started, of course, from a very, very low base, if any base at all. So they'll take some heart for that, but they really thought they could win this. Nigel Farage was here and he spent the day here campaigning, put in a lot of effort. But Plaid Cymru have shown that they are resilient, they can bounce back. However, having said that, tactical voting was a huge factor here. A lot of Labour people, Conservatives, Lib Dems switched to Plaid. There was an anti-Reform UK vote tactically for Plaid Cymru. That probably would not happen in either a general election or elections for the Senate. So, everything to play for, obviously. Great night for Plaid Cymru. A near miss, if you like, for Reform UK. They'll be very disappointed. But for Labour, a massive inquest will begin now. There will be questions about Sir Keir Starmer's leadership, because, as Hugh Hiranka-Davis was telling me, of course, Labour got really stunned by the emphasis by Reform, and indeed the reception that got on immigration. Stop the boats. Well, there's no small boats here, obviously, not even on this moat. Immigration and the illegal crossings in the English Channel, long way from here, clearly having an impact as far away as here in the Welsh valleys. Big problems for Labour.
From John and his Welsh moat, good to have you with us, John Craig, there in Caerphilly. Well, a short time ago, we asked the Cabinet Office Minister, Nick Thomas-Symonds, for his reaction to that result.
In terms of the result, of course, I'm not shying away from how disappointing the result is. I went to Caerphilly, as you can imagine. It's not too far from where I'm speaking to you from this morning here in Torfaen on a number of occasions. And what I found on the doorsteps was a real desire for more change, a frustration about the pace of change that was coming through to me very strongly when I was speaking to people. I think that's been reflected in the result. But by-elections are always difficult for incumbent parties, and this one was certainly no different.
We'll be hearing from the Conservatives, we'll also be hearing from Plaid and also Reform throughout the course of the morning. Sticking with politics, but international politics now, European leaders arriving in London for a coalition of the willing meeting today discussing support for Ukraine. The Prime Minister will host leaders from Denmark, the Netherlands and NATO, with the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky also expected to attend. Amanda's here for more on this. And the challenge, and it was laid down on this programme at the door of the Prime Minister from a Ukrainian MP, is to not be the coalition of the talking, which is what he said it felt like at many times, and be the coalition of the doing.
Well, that's the big question, isn't it? And I think it's quite a notable change in tone, the information that we've been given from Number 10 about what they plan to discuss at today's Coalition of the Willing meeting compared to what we've seen previously. Previously, it's always kind of been quite optimistic and focusing on plans for after a ceasefire, after a peace deal is reached, how that could be, how Ukraine's security could be enforced if such an agreement is reached between Donald Trump and President Putin. Now it seems the focus is very much backwards, and it's about how best to help Ukraine in their fight against Russia going into the winter and continue to put pressure on Putin. Now, we know that President Zelensky is going to be arriving at Downing Street later on this morning, and then he's having a meeting with Sir Keir Starmer, the two of them then going on a short walk across to the Foreign Office, where they'll be meeting with Mark Rutte of NATO and the Prime Ministers of Denmark and the Netherlands. They'll also be meeting children from a school where a lot of Ukrainian refugees have joined. Then they're taking part in this conference call with around 20 other leaders. So a lot of people taking part in the call. We understand that the key messages that Sir Keir Starmer will be giving, one, urging other leaders to donate more long-range missiles to help the Ukrainians. The government pointing to the fact that UK Storm Shadow missiles were used earlier this week to hit a chemical plant in Russia, and saying we need more of this. Now, of course, we remember that President Trump was talking about Tomahawk missiles potentially. The Ukrainians being able to buy them. That doesn't seem like that is happening now, but certainly this is a message that President Zelensky has been repeatedly making in the past few days. The other message is about frozen Russian assets and releasing them to provide loans to Ukraine to help with their future defence over the winter. Now, that's something that President Zelensky was talking about with European leaders yesterday at a summit. Didn't quite get over the line. They're quite concerned about sort of legal issues surrounding that, although there was a diplomatic success for him yesterday in that the EU agreed to help fund some of the Ukrainian financial issues there, and really trying to build on that momentum as well of President Trump announcing those sanctions on Russia, in the hopes that building on more and more pressure on Russia can help move closer to a future peace. But at the moment, the Russians certainly don't seem to be listening.
We'll follow the outcomes of that meeting in due course. Amanda, for the moment, thank you so much. 11 minutes past 8. Let's bring you up to speed on some of the day's other stories, shall we? Significant challenges remain in how police tackle child sexual exploitation and grooming gangs. That's according to a Watchdog. The report from the Inspector of Fire and Rescue Services said issues over data accuracy and national coordination could weaken police response. It comes as 5 abuse survivors tell the Prime Minister they will only continue working with grooming gangs inquiry if Jess Phillips remains as safeguarding minister. That's despite calls from 4 other survivors for her to quit. 2 men have been charged in connection with an arson attack on Peacehaven Mosque in East Sussex. No one injured in the fire on the 4th of October, despite damage to the building and a nearby car. 38-year-old Ricky Ryder, 34-year-old Jack Slowley will appear in court later today. Voters in Ireland head to the polls to elect the country's next president today. 2 candidates in the running to replace the outgoing Michael D. Higgins, who's held the role for 14 years. The former government minister for Fine Gael, Heather Humphreys, will face independent Catherine Connolly, backed by Sinn Féin and a number of other parties. Lots of politics today, but we've also got some good news.
Yes, and this is a groundbreaking trial that is starting for multiple sclerosis, and it's being done in the UK. It is trying to reset the immune system, trying to get to the heart of the problem, that the immune system turns against the body, and this could correct the fault. And doctors are very excited this could slow or even stop the disease. Our cameras had exclusive access to see the first patient receiving treatment.
OK, I'll start.
Every day, Emily wakes up unsure whether she'll be able to stand. She has multiple sclerosis. 3 times she's had relapses that meant she was unable to move her legs. And with her dad now in a wheelchair, also because of MS, she jumped at the chance to be the first person in the UK to test a new treatment that could slow or even stop the disease. And it uses her own cells that have been tweaked in the lab.
The thought of being in a wheelchair and not being able to chase after my children or not being able to walk up and down the stairs every day is something that I want to avoid at all costs. So I'm kind of subjecting myself to this. But I know in the long run, I want to stop it before it has a chance to stop me.
Multiple sclerosis is caused by rogue cells in the immune system turning on the body, attacking the protective coating of nerves in the brain and spinal cord and causing blurred vision or other disabling relapses. But doctors at University College London hospitals are leading a new trial of CAR T cell therapy. They removed some of Emily's blood, then isolated some of her killer T cells, which are normally part of the body's immune defences against disease. These were genetically modified in the lab, weaponising them to attack the rogue B cells instead. Now they're being infused back into Emily. The hope is they'll wipe them out, preventing further damage to the nerves. The doctor behind the treatment says it's one of the most significant developments in her clinical lifetime.
If we can intervene with something that can induce an immune reset, which is what we think this therapy has the capacity to do, it essentially reaches deeply into all the areas of the body where the disease-causing cells are, eradicates them, and then it's almost like flicking a switch and you get the recovery of just normal B cells.
CAR T cell therapy is already successfully used in some aggressive blood cancers, and there are promising results in treating a disease called lupus, which, like MS, is caused by rogue cells in the immune system.
There will be just 18 patients in this first global trial. More studies will be needed, and it's far too soon to be calling this a potential cure. But doctors are optimistic that if all goes well, it could stop MS in its tracks.
Emily is a biology teacher. She understands that there are potential risks with an experimental treatment, but she's convinced by the science that underpins it.
What's my options here? I could just let this disease take over and we could wait and see, and I might be lucky and nothing happened to me, or I might have a massive relapse next week and never be able to walk again. Are we willing to take that chance? And I think we've come to the conclusion that no, we're not willing to take that chance, and that we have to trust science and trust medicine to kind of do its job.
There are 150,000 people with MS in the UK. Treatments are improving, but doctors say a one-off therapy that targets the underlying cause of the disease could be a game changer. Thomas Moore, Sky News at the University College London Hospitals.
Amazing stuff. And now they kind of watch and wait.
Yes, so this is an early stage trial. They need to make sure that it is safe before they roll it up to more patients in larger trials. And that's where they really test whether this is an effective treatment. If it is, they roll it out clinically, and that would be really exciting for patients, because this is a one-off treatment. They would only need it once in their lives, potentially, and it would have a dramatic effect.
Fascinating stuff. Thomas, good to have you with us. Thanks so much. Now then, let's return to that story we've been telling you about throughout the course of the morning, the meeting of the Coalition of the Willing that will discuss support for Ukraine and sanctions for Russia, meeting later today. Sir Keir Starmer hosting leaders from Denmark, the Netherlands and NATO. Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky expected to attend. Pleased to say that joining us now is Carlos Cuerpo, Minister of Economy, Trade and Enterprise for Spain. Good to have you with us, Minister. I appreciate you sharing your time. And just before we talk about the meeting of the Coalition of the Willing, reports in the last few hours that Spanish jets were scrambled in response to Russian aircraft in NATO airspace. What can you tell us about that?
Well, what we can tell you is that this is just another sign of the strong commitment from Spain with the defense of NATO allies, and also of our commitment with defense of our eastern border and of Ukraine. We just talked about the Coalition of the Willing meeting today. Our president will also be participating virtually from Madrid, but he will also be part of that meeting.
So you're attending in person, Pedro Sanchez joining remotely. What are you expecting to be the outcomes of this meeting? How optimistic are you for these outcomes?
Well, you know, we're making progress on different fronts. We know that we have to step up our efforts, both financially, but also in terms of the military support for Ukraine. And what we expect is, again, very strong signs from the participants in that meeting, showing the support for Ukraine. Yesterday, we had the announcement that Spain will participate in the NATO program to provide for short-term needs for Ukraine. So I think what we expect is that this will be the roadmap ahead, strong financial and military support still to come for Ukraine.
You're speaking in very strong terms. You're using the word itself repeatedly. You will be even more aware than I am, though, that the President of the United States is unhappy with your government. I think it's fair to say, well, that was his words, very unhappy with the level of defence spending that Spain's currently committed to. It's going to rise to 2%, but it's still 1 point something at the moment. How concerned are you that Donald Trump is not in a good place in his mind when it comes to Spain and your country?
Well, I think there is a need to remind everyone of the big effort that this government is doing in terms of increasing defense spending. Just to give you an updated figure, we will reach 2% of GDP this year with an increase of more than 11 billion euros of spending in defense in 2025. So this 2% of GDP was we were aiming at reaching it in 2029, but we will bring it forward to 2025 as a token, again, of our commitment towards our NATO and EU allies on defense. And this is just one element, but of course, another one is our commitment to cover for our share of capabilities within NATO. So Spain will keep on being a reliable ally. You just mentioned the specific case in the eastern border, and another example that I gave you was our participation in the NATO program on Pearl. So these are just a few examples showing that we will continue to of course, be a reliable team player on that front.
Yeah, and a very visible commitment over the skies of Lithuania in the last 12 or so hours. That 2% goal being brought forward, like you say, and I'm sure that will be welcomed. People like Mark Rutte, the NATO Secretary-General, will be very pleased to hear that. But Donald Trump has some pretty tough asks of every country, and he's threatened to punish Spain if you don't spend more. What do you make of that? It's quite the line to say, let alone a threat to wield. How do you go about dealing with that?
Well, you know, again, from our side, I think the most important element is to keep on showing our commitment to our NATO allies and to the defense of Ukraine. Ukraine is the talk of the day. We're talking about financial support from the EU side as well, from Spain particularly. We're talking about military support. We're talking about humanitarian support. So we're really concentrated on keeping up with our efforts with NATO allies and with Ukraine. And that's the line that we should keep on focusing. And hopefully, again, I think everyone will be satisfied with the degree of commitment and reliability of Spain on that front, which is a degree of 100%.
The meeting taking place later, we can see the two flags behind you, Spain's and the United Kingdom's. How confident are you that Europe will be able to share the burden of protecting European security?
Well, I think in this sense, UK is proving to be also another key ally on that front since the very beginning, together with other G7 partners. It's not just about EU security. Protecting Ukraine is about protecting democracy as well as the rule of law. And this is also another shared, of course, endeavor with the UK. And actually, you can see how strong that commitment is from their side as well. For example, with the participation of Chancellor Reese in many of the meetings that were held by finance ministers of the European Union over the past few months, really trying to rally efforts together to the financial support of Ukraine as well.
Minister of Economy, Trade and Enterprise for Spain, Carlos Cuerpo, good to have you with us. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Jackie's here now, breakfast, to talk about sport.
Yeah, Dyche ball started last night. Sean Dyche began his era at Forest, got all goals to come from a busy night in the Europa League. We're going to show you the misses as well. Aston Villa have a moment to forget from the penalty spot. Also wasn't a great night for new Rangers manager Danny Roll. He apologised to the travelling fans after losing 3-0 in Norway. And the race heats up quite literally in Formula One as both McLaren drivers try not to crash into each other at this weekend's Mexican Grand Prix.
Now then, the annual Power List is this year celebrating its 20th anniversary, acknowledging the achievements of the most influential people of African, Caribbean and African American heritage here in the UK. This year making the #1 spot is Afua Che, the Bank of England's Chief Financial Officer and Executive Director. Very pleased to say that Afua joins us now. Congratulations as well on this. How was getting that announcement?
It feels very surreal. I'm incredibly honoured, and incredibly humbled to see myself on the same list as household names like Ian Wright, Idris Elba, Dame Pat McGrath is incredibly humbling. And I'm particularly happy that somebody from the public sector and someone from the Bank of England has been recognised in this way for contribution to society. So really happy about that.
Surreal's an interesting word. Why that? What was kind of surreal about being involved in that? Because, you know, if I open up your page, which I did do, on the Bank of England's website, you know, you oversaw a balance sheet of over £1 trillion. You look after a mechanism that sees £700 billion worth of transactions every day. Your achievements are incredible.
Thank you. It's more from the standpoint of we're here to serve society, and that's what motivates me, and that's what gives me my purpose. So to receive this level of recognition is absolutely incredible.
And talk to us about being involved in amongst those names, like you mentioned, because there are some incredible people featured, and incredible people who have been featured as well.
Absolutely. So I think the work of the Powerless is incredibly important because what it does is it showcases black leaders across a wide variety of industries. And so it creates precedents for young people to be able to look up and say, those are the role models. If they can do it, so can I. And what we've seen throughout history is that sometimes the contributions of ethnic minority talent or black leaders are not always recorded, and so they get forgotten and sometimes get lost. And so the Power List is fantastic because it actually showcases all of that talent and it allows people to create vision and it establishes a legacy so that people can say, yes, it's possible. Let me go for it.
And the diversity as well of roles, you think, from everybody from Sir Lewis Hamilton, who's been involved, Sharon White, through to yourself. It's sport, it's banking, it's commerce, it's actors, Idris Elba, you know, we're talking about football as well, Ian Wright today. How important is it in a world where there are 1,000,001 influencers and voices and people that you could look up to, that there are lists like this and moments like this to really showcase incredible people and voices like your own?
It's important because it shows that people are not only achieving success in their fields, but they're also paving the way for others to succeed. And that's what's special about the Power List. It puts particular emphasis on people who've been recognised for their contribution to helping other people to fulfil their own ambitions and their own talents.
So what do you do with this gong now for the rest of the year? What do you do with this kind of nomination and this kind of award personally? Where do you take this?
I have always been motivated by the ability to help other people to fulfil their ambitions and to encourage them to dream big, aim high and go for it. And this gives me the opportunity to continue to do that.
And this evening is the awards due?
Absolutely. So there's a black tie gala dinner of celebration at Grosvenor House on Park Lane. So it will be a brilliant opportunity for me and other people on the Power List and lots of extraordinary people who are achieving great things in their fields to come together to celebrate black excellence and to continue to raise the bar and encourage people to raise their own expectations of what is possible and to really just aim high, go for it and know that the sky's the limit.
And for any young people who are watching and thinking, you know, it's the end of the week, this has been going on for 20 years, I'm wondering where I'm going to go in life, what to do in life, who I can be in life. What's your message to them?
Believe in yourself. And if you can't see it, be it. And if you don't like it, change it. We need your talents. It's all possible. Go for it.
And will you allow yourself a glass of champagne later?
I think it's going to be a very long night.
Good. Well, we enjoy the night. We appreciate you starting your day very early with us as well here on Breakfast. Afua, good to have you with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
It is 8:31. Let's return now to the top story this morning. The by-election in Caerphilly, Plaid Cymru, achieving a historic victory, winning the seat from Labour, who have held it since it was created. Let's take a look at some of the results, shall we? Well, Plaid Cymru's candidate, Lindsay Whittle, won the seat with a record 47% of the vote, a swing of almost 27% from Labour. Reform came in second, achieving nearly 36% of that vote. Labour's Richard Tunnicliffe was a distant third, just 11%. Disastrous result for Labour, trailing even further behind the Conservatives and also the Green Party. Well, joining us now, the leader of Plaid, Rhys Iorwerth. Good to have you with us. I appreciate you sharing your time. It will have been a long night and an early start for you, but you must be thrilled with this result.
Yeah, delighted for Lindsay Whittle and all the team that fought so hard for this victory, and delighted for the constituency of Caerphilly too for such a historic result. But it's not just historic in and of itself. There's a real significance here, of course, in that this comes 6 months before the general election in Wales, where Plaid Cymru is now being seen more and more as a party ready to form the next government, the first non-Labour-led government in the history of devolution.
What does this win tell us about Plaid and its people? Because we're seeing here pictures of Lindsay. This was his 14th attempt. Like, he's stuck the course.
He is Mr. Caerphilly. He's represented his community for the best part of 5 decades. He's been the leader of the council here on a couple of occasions. He's also represented the constituency in the Welsh Parliament with distinction in the past. And they know they have, that genuine community champion in him. But of course, they have behind Lindsay a party that is in such a good place in terms of our programme for government going into next year, in terms of our determination to reset Welsh politics, standing up for the people of communities like this in Caerphilly with a different kind of proposition for government. There's been a tiredness with Labour for such a long time. The disillusionment has really shown itself so clearly since Keir Starmer came into power. Change is in the air, and Plaid Cymru so clearly now, having seen reform rejected here yesterday, is that positive change that hopefully I can persuade the whole of Wales now to embrace.
You talk about that hopefulness to persuade the whole of Wales. If we were to extrapolate, and it's tricky with these kind of things, but if we were to extrapolate forward to next year, you would win 52 seats, Reform at 33 and Labour at 10. How achievable do you think the success of last night is nationally?
Well, I never take anything for granted in politics, and we work hard for every single vote now for the next 6 months, as we did here. But it's very, very clear that change is achievable. And I don't want people just to think of Plaid Cymru as an alternative. I want them to think of Plaid Cymru as the government that can take Wales forward on the next chapter in its story. I think one of the big barriers to change is people not believing that change is possible. Well, they see now from this result, from polls months after months, that Plaid Cymru is in a place where we've never been before, ready to lead Welsh government and changing Wales for the better, for good.
You talked there about people maybe perceiving you as an alternative vote, and there will be some critics who say that this was a win for you as a result of tactical voting, either to keep out reform or to really put the needle in against Labour. What's your response to those accusations that this was maybe a flash in the pan in this one by-election, and it might not be repeated in 2026?
I think we look at the wider context. Plaid had our most successful ever UK general election last year, so this comes off the back of that. We have seen consistent polling for some time now, showing Plaid Cymru in the lead. And what I want to do is build on what we've seen in Caerphilly. Not just here, and repay the faith shown in Lindsay Whittle and in us yesterday, but show that we can take that forward to the whole of Wales. I firmly believe we can do that. And the closer that election in May comes, I think people will become more and more focused on why it is that we need a change of government. I think they've decided that already, but why it is in a choice of two futures, the division and lack of ideas and no real interest in Wales, if we can be honest, from reform, or that ambition by a party in Plaid Cymru that has been standing up for Wales for a century and that is now really ready to offer new leadership for Wales.
You just mentioned Reform there and said they have no interest in Wales. Reform will join us later in the programme, and I'm sure they'll say, well, look, we got about 400 votes the last time there was an election in Caerphilly. Now we've got 12,000. We've got 36% of the vote. We have a lot of interest in Wales because voters there have a lot of interest in us. You have to acknowledge that they have had, despite coming second, a successful night. What will be your countenance to the challenge of Reform?
We have to acknowledge that people are frustrated about the state of their communities, of public services, and have been drawn to reform in greater numbers. This is a global phenomenon. This isn't something happening in Caerphilly or in Wales or the UK. This is happening across the world. What we have to do, of course, is show that there's an alternative, positive way forward with actual answers. When I say that Reform aren't particularly interested in Wales, what I mean by that is they don't have candidates ahead of next year. They don't have a leader in Wales. Nigel Farage himself admits they have no policies for Wales. I think the people of Wales deserve better than that, and they have in Plaid Cymru a party that has all of that in spades. This has been a restart of a reset of politics in Wales. I want to see that through now. I've made it clear, said it in my conference speech a couple of weeks ago. We're here to replace Labour, and it's not just for its own sake. It's so we get better outcomes for Wales. That's what Plaid Cymru is always about.
Reenap Yorwerth, good to have you with us. Appreciate you sharing your time, joining us live from Caerphilly. Thank you.
Thank you.
From Caerphilly to the United States now. The president there, Donald Trump, says he's ending trade talks with Canada over TV adverts. The recent ads protest US tariffs and have been slammed on the president's social media as egregious behaviour. Martha Kellner has the latest.
Canada is one of the US's closest trading partners, and so this represents a major, in fact, a total breakdown in negotiations over a trade deal. And some might say it also shows just how fickle the US President Donald Trump can be when it comes to these negotiations, because all of this has broken down over one TV advert. It's an advert which was paid for by the province of Ontario, which is a region of Canada, and it features the voice of Ronald Reagan, a former US president, US Republican president, talking negatively about tariffs, obviously in a completely different context. It was taken from a radio presentation in 1987, but the advert was designed to provoke a reaction. And it's clearly poked the bear, because Donald Trump tonight taking to Truth Social, he wrote, the Ronald Reagan Foundation has announced that Canada has fraudulently used an advertisement which is fake, featuring Ronald Reagan speaking negatively about tariffs. And based on their egregious behaviour, all trade negotiations with Canada are hereby terminated. Thank you for your attention to this matter. And he signs off that note, President DJT. Now, Donald Trump has imposed double-digit tariffs on many Canadian exports. He's also repeatedly suggested that Canada should be the 51st state of the US. And obviously, as you might imagine, that has prompted negative reaction in Canada. I've spent some time there. I've seen US products being pulled off the shelves in certain cities in Canada. You know, they're selling Canadianos instead of Americanos. They're cancelling trips that they'd planned, some Canadian people, to the United States. But the US is a hugely important trading partner, the most important trading partner to Canada. And the Prime Minister, Mark Carney, has been desperate to try and come to a deal with Donald Trump over trade. He's been trying to repair that relationship. He was in the White House a couple of weeks ago, and just last night he was joking on a TV interview about a baseball game between the Toronto Blue Jays, a Canadian team, and the LA Dodgers, obviously a US team. Well, you'd imagine that his next interaction with Donald Trump, given this news, may not be quite so light-hearted.
Time to get the take of the Conservatives on politics this morning. Deputy Chairman of the Conservative Party, Matt Vickers, joins us. Good to have you with us. Good morning. Most of the other parties are in kind of a ponderous mood regarding Caerphilly. It's a pretty tough night for you guys. You didn't even get your deposit back.
Do you know what? It's been Labour for 100 years. This is the Labour heartlands. But I don't think anybody was running down to the bookies to put money on the Conservatives in this one. But the reality is...
2% of the vote, though, is pretty dismal.
The reality is we had a really tough election last year in Wales. We lost all of our parliamentarians, all of our MPs in Wales. We're dusting ourselves down now. We're learning the lessons that the British people have given us, and we're coming back with an offering. We're going to axe that stamp duty. We're going to put more police on the streets. We actually, the one thing that does differentiate us is we're the fiscally responsible people. We don't pledge what we're going to spend everything on. We tell you what we're going to spend. We also tell you how we're going to pay for it. That's the big difference between the Conservatives and the others. We set out a conference with £47 billion worth of public spending restrictions that we would then spend, but we weren't even going to blow all the money that we were saving. We are going to put that money back into paying down the national debt.
That is all well and good if you have power. And just one last thought for Caerphilly. The Senate elections, again, in May of 2026. You currently have 14 seats. Applied on 13. There's every chance that you will not be even the second party in the Welsh Senate. And then it's all well and good having these great pledges, but if you can't then enact them...
People often vote to send a message in a by-election. By-elections, you know, we remember when the Lib Dems used to suck up every by-election going, but they never quite arrived in office. By-elections are an opportunity for people to send a message. And boy, have they sent a message today to the Labour Party. Labour, for over 100 years, the people of Wales are roundly narked about what Labour are doing to our farmers, to our pensioners, to our small business people, to their energy prices. They told us we were going to get a £300 cut and we're paying 200 quid more nearly. Disastrous government, and people have told Labour that they're not happy with them. They've sent that message using the by-election.
And Labour will be hearing it loud and clear this morning. What we will hear from David Bull from Reform later in this programme, I am sure, is he say, well, look, this is what we've achieved in Caerphilly. We're going to achieve it in this constituency, in this constituency, in this constituency. And many of them, it will be votes to the detriment of the Conservatives. And that it's a real challenge for you, that Reform are not just nipping your heels, but they're racing far past you in so many of these polls.
By-elections are opportunities
It's
to
more
send
than just
message.
by-elections,
But beyond that, we know there is a huge electoral challenge for the Conservative Party. That's why we are bringing forward our pitch to the British people. It was always going to take time after the last general election to be heard, to get amongst it, for people to start listening to us again. But we've got a pitch. You know, stamp duty, a big deal to people out there. When I'm knocking on the doors, people are inclined to listen, to hear what we're about and what we're offering. But more importantly, this country needs the Conservative Party. It is the Conservative Party who comes in and cleans up the mess with our economy. 17% more people out of work. Businesses closing at the fastest rate since the world economic crash. It's the Conservatives who come in and tidy that up. We're responsible with the nation's finances. We live within our means. That's why the Conservative Party will be needed at the next election.
Live within our means and tidy up the economy. Prior to Sir Keir Starmer's government coming to power, taxation was at its highest rate for 70 years under the Conservatives.
Why was that?
There was, of course, the pandemic. I'm not
got
going
me, yeah.
to debate that. But you can't say we live within our means and then also say, just
the help
tiny away the taxation.
The help that we gave out during COVID was huge. If you go to small business people, they would just not have survived. There would not have been the jobs that were there. People on the front line were grateful for that support.
But productivity down since 2008, taxation up. Like, you know, the economy's not been a fever pitch.
You might say that tax was at its highest level. It's significantly higher. Now, debt is higher. Inflation's virtually doubled. This is a disastrous time for the economy. We were at more or less record levels of employment. 17% more people without a job, without a pay packet, without being able to look after their own family, now thrown on the scrap heap, unable to live out their aspirations and ambitions. It's very grim out there.
The Cabinet Office Minister Nick Thomas-Symonds this morning was reiterating the line from the Labour Party that they will stick to their manifesto pledges regarding taxation on working-class people. The front pages of the papers warn that potentially there might be a 1p increase on income tax. What would the Conservatives do?
Well, let's be honest, if they don't do that, it's probably the single promise made in their manifesto that they haven't broke. They've broke their promises to pensioners, they've broke their promises to farmers, they've broke their promises to small business people across the country. This is just more of the same. What would the Conservatives do? The Conservatives have a plan, a fully costed plan, to cut public spending by £47 billion. We've said we reduce the number of civil servants.
Lots of my audience think that sounds a bit like austerity. We've had cuts before. How's it
they
different?
Should listen to what I'm suggesting we would reduce spending on. We would reduce spending on international aid. We'd take it down to 0.1%. We've said that we would look at the welfare system. This country badly needs welfare reform. The number of people signing up to sickness and incapacity benefits reached 3,000 people a day. That's up by 50% in recent times. We can't go on like that. People out there working hard, doing the right thing, getting up every morning, grafting their socks off. What want to know that the welfare system is, well, fair and they're not being abused. And that's exactly what we would do. We would refine that. We'd say that people with mobility cars, only the people who actually need a mobility car should get them. That's what people want to see. They want to see money that's taken off them in tax spent properly. They're not seeing that at the moment.
Right, good to have you with us. Joining us from the Conservative Party. Good to have you with us. Thank you. I know you're a fan of Stockton Town. Unfortunately, I don't think they're going to appear.
The mighty Stockton Town.
I don't think they're going to appear, Jackie, in the sport.
We have a lot of clubs in Europe this season, a lot. But Stockton are not one of them. I'm sorry, they're not in my bulletin this morning. But Go Ahead are in my bulletin, which is still kind of making me laugh a little bit inside. The fact that there is a team called Go Ahead Villa, and don't win that match against Go Ahead. There were missed chances for Villa last night. We will have those. But it was a really good night for Sean Dyche. He started his tenure at Nottingham Forest. Great affinity with the club, great history with the club. But he said it's not about history, it's about the here and now. And the here and now was pretty good.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report. Sky Business sponsors this report.
Jackie, thank you so much. Still plenty more to come on The Breakfast Show, including Katie Spencer sitting down with the actress Reese Witherspoon to chat about her new novel, Gone Before Goodbye.
Liberation Day.
By popular demand, here we are.
Donald Trump. It is quite the story. Wherever it goes, on Trump 100, we go with it.
and tell us who you're looking for.
Unbelievable we've come to this.
Are you overstating the reach and significance of this deal?
Not like you said it.
From the UK?
Why don't you go back to your country where you have a major migrant problem?
It was 10 feet from him, and all of a sudden the shot's rang out.
People impacted.
I'll tell you on another day on the podcast what that was all about.
Join us wherever you get your podcast.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
All alcohol products, not just wine, will have labels warning of liver disease and the link to fatal cancers.
Is it crazy? It's an industry worth around €14 billion a year. That's why Italy sees this Irish plan as such a threat. It's always instructive and occasionally entertaining to hear what Donald Trump has to say on the issue of Brexit.
She's got her own way of doing it, that's okay.
The job takes me to every corner of this island.
The rioting stemmed from a horrific daytime stabbing attack at a primary school in the city centre.
The scale of the rioting and the destruction it caused is pretty much unprecedented here in Dublin. Jerry, any comment on the judge's decision? Do you feel vindicated, Jerry? This is the end, the somewhat chaotic end, of a 52-day trial.
Micheál Martin could be set to head back to government with the Taoiseach Simon Harris.
Are you confident that you can now return as Taoiseach?
I'm cautiously optimistic and excited.
A mystery press conference hastily called. Leo Varadkar strode out and didn't disappoint.
I am resigning as President and Leader of Fine Gael effective today.
The people here sometimes feel they're somewhat neglected by the Irish government, to the extent that this place is sometimes known as the Forgotten County.
The waters of Ireland and Britain should be home to great white sharks, but none have ever been found.
If there are great white sharks in this area, there's no reason they wouldn't come here to feed. It's basically a buffet on a beach. This could be not only a record-breaking storm, but potentially the most dangerous storm ever to hit Ireland. Sky News, get the full story first.
We arrive. A secret hospital hidden in the Myanmar jungle, treating the victims of this bloody war.
This is Myanmar today. Its military rulers don't want the world to see, but we have.
I fight for my own future. I fight for my generation's future.
This is an actual crime.
They don't care for that.
Myanmar army is only a couple of kilometers away.
So this is a major humanitarian disaster.
You've just been talking to me about sticky tape at Formula One.
I know. I do like that story. So it was a bit of tape which was put on the wall in the pit lane for McLaren drivers to use as a guide when they presumably pitted. And then Red Bull, one of their mechanics, went in and tried to peel it off, got fined, couldn't get it off because it was like really stuck on. And I just thought, like, dirty tricks on a real low level.
Fine. 50,000 euros as well as a huge fine. It was worthy of a book, and a book that Reese Witherspoon might write one day, because she's going from being just a book club operator to an author as well. Let's get the details to Katie Spencer.
It feels really deeply personal because usually as an actor I walk into other people's worlds and it's already set up and I can bring my part, but this was like creating the whole world with Harlan, and just from everything beginning to end feels very personal.
We live in an age where celebrities have lots of ghost-written books out there.
I said to her for day one, it's only going to be you and me. We are not, there's no third person in here. I don't do that. No note-taking, no third person. So it's just every word you see comes from Reese and me.
We live in a sort of age where we all can get hugely frustrated with social media, and it can seem like a sort of giant negative sometimes because it's infiltrating all parts of our lives. But I wondered whether sort of you felt the success of your book club, it can also bring create wonderful communities as well.
When I started the book club, I think in 2015, it's really evolved over the past 9-10 years. It used to be that, you know, social media was this sort of, you know, frivolous thing that people occasionally looked at. Now it's become quite an investment of people's time. And also maybe, you know, we're seeing so much about how it affects your psyche. And so I think we've been thinking about how do you have this great community meet in real life? That's the most important thing to me, I think, is community where you can find it.
We all know we should put our phone down more. We all know we should stop scrolling. We all know at night when we read a novel, we feel better we're mentally healthier, we're less stressed. Scientifically, it's been proven by the Queen's Reading Room.
Thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you so much.
If you were to write a book...
Pretty cool, isn't it?
I think
Reese
it's very
Witherspoon
cool.
on the breakfast show.
Hi, Katie, do you want to go and interview Reese? Yes, please.
Yeah.
If you were to write a book, what would it be?
Oh, please, can I come back to you on that?
Yeah, sure.
Something about gymnastics.
Fair, specialist subject.
Yeah.
We're on air until 10 for you to come up with your title.
Or house renovations.
A crossover hit here. It's being developed live on television with...
What's yours?
Some farming novel, you know, the usual. Plenty more to come. All the day's top stories after the break.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Good morning to you at 9 o'clock on today's show. Plaid Cymru defeat Labour in a by-election victory, fending off Reform UK from claiming a seat in the South.
Plus, we will have the goals from a very busy night in European football as Aston Villa and Crystal Palace both suffer shock defeats.
All the action, sport and politics to come on Friday the 24th of October.
A by-election humiliation for Labour here in Caerphilly, but celebrations for Plaid Cymru after they seized victory in a seat that had been Labour ever since it was created.
However, Plaid's win also a blow for Farage, who had pinned his hopes on proving that Reform can convert their lead in opinion polls to election wins. Meanwhile, Sir Keir Starmer holds a coalition of the willing meeting in London to discuss further pressure on Russia. Volodymyr Zelensky expected to attend. A Offended by TV advert, President Trump pulls out of all trade talks with Canada. A major breakthrough in the treatment of MS. Sky News speaks to the first patient in the UK to be treated with CAR-T therapy.
And in sport, Sean Dyche started life as Nottingham Forest manager with a morale-boosting win against Porto in the Europa League.
Very good morning to you. Plaid Cymru have won the by-election in the Senedd seat of Caerphilly for the first time. A historic loss, though, for Labour, who'd held the Senedd seat since its creation and the Westminster seat for over a century. 72-year-old Lindsay Whittle, who stood as a candidate for Plaid 13 times, also saw off a challenge from Reform UK, who had hoped to prove they can turn opinion polls into election victories. Let's take a quick look at the numbers as they happened. Well, Plaid Cymru's candidate, Lindsay Whittle, won the seat with a record 47% of the vote, a swing of 27% from Labour. Reform in second, 36% of that vote share. Labour's Richard Tunnicliffe, a distant third at just 11%, a disastrous result for the party. Trailing even further behind them were the Conservatives and the Greens. Well, our chief political correspondent, John Craig, has our first report.
I give public notice that Lindsay Whittle is duly elected as the member of the Senedd for Caerphilly constituency.
Victory for Plaid Cymru after a bruising by-election battle with Nigel Farage's Reform UK, in which Labour's vote collapsed. Partly thanks to tactical voting against Reform, 72-year-old Lindsay Whittle won an election in Caerphilly at the 14th attempt.
Listen now, Cardiff, and listen, Westminster. This is Caerphilly and Wales telling you we want a better deal for every corner of Wales. The big parties need to sit up and take notice. Wales, we are at the dawn of new leadership. We are at the dawn of a new beginning.
Reform UK's Claire Powell had been ahead in the polls and tipped to snatch victory.
We started off at a very low start because we were the new kids on the block, and we've run a very good campaign, and I'm very proud of what the team's done.
Labour blamed Reform UK making immigration a major issue in the campaign for its dismal result.
I think what Starmer needs to do as UK Labour and the UK government and all of his cabinet, what we need to do in Wales under Lyned Morgan, is actually deliver on bread and butter issues that matter to people, that they see around them. Otherwise, all we do is play to the tune of those who want to make every election from here for the next 20 years about immigration and ethnicity.
In the end, this was quite a decisive victory for Plaid Cymru. They defeated Reform UK by almost 4,000 votes, a relatively comfortable win. But it was largely down to tactical voting, because the Labour vote collapsed. Many of their supporters switched to Plaid Cymru, and the votes for the Conservatives, Liberal Democrats and Greens were derisory. Plaid Cymru are celebrating. Reform UK have to think again at how they make progress in Wales. Plaid will hope this result is a springboard to becoming the governing party in Wales next year. For Reform UK, it's a setback in its bid to make inroads in Wales. And for Keir Starmer, it's a disaster in what was previously a Labour stronghold.
Let's take you to John Craig, a very basking in the sunlight there this morning in Caerphilly, John. But it will be Plaid basking in glory, but Labour really scratching their heads this morning.
Well, Plaid are about to celebrate their victory here by Caerphilly Castle in the next half hour or so. For Labour, of course, massive inquest underway. You heard Hugh Iranka-Davies there. He used to be a Westminster MP. He was a junior minister in the Blair-Brown years. He's the Deputy First Minister now. He said the problem for Labour was that Reform made immigration such a big issue, and of course Labour got hammered on that. So we might be inland in the Welsh valleys and nowhere near the English Channel, but that small boat crisis is obviously creating problems for Labour even here. But of course there was tactical voting. A lot of Conservatives, Labour and Lib Dems all switched to Plaid Cymru. The votes for the for Lib Dems, Tories and Greens absolutely tiny, just a few hundred. But Labour will be really concerned because this was a stronghold as impregnable as this castle used to be, until of course it was captured by Oliver Cromwell. Well, that was in 1645. Nigel Farage hoped to capture Caerphilly, came reasonably close. They threw everything at it, the Reform UK. Mr Farage came here 3 times, including on polling day, but obviously the tactical voting, a stop reform vote, helped Plaid Cymru win. So they're celebrating, but for Labour, really, they really have got to work out how they combat the twin threat of reform on the right, talking about immigration, and then more left-wing parties. Plaid Cymru here, but elsewhere in the UK, probably Lib Dems and others, and Greens possibly. So big inquests for Labour in particular. Tories did very badly as well, but we're about to see some Plaid Cymru celebrations shortly.
John Craig in Caerphilly, good to have you with us. Appreciate it, thank you. Well, a little earlier, we spoke with the leader of Plaid Cymru, Rhinath Iorwerth, who says that change is in the air. He says Lindsay Whittle's represented his community for decades.
They know they have, that genuine community champion in him. But of course, they have behind Lindsay a party that is in such a good place in terms of our programme for government going into next year, in terms of our determination to reset Welsh politics, standing up for the people of communities like this in Caerphilly with a different kind of proposition for government. There's been a tiredness with Labour for such a long time. The disillusionment has really shown itself so clearly since Keir Starmer came into power. Change is in the air, and Plaid Cymru so clearly now, having seen reform rejected here yesterday, is that positive change that hopefully I can persuade the whole of Wales now to embrace.
Well, earlier, Cabinet Office Minister Nick Thomas-Symonds gave us this reaction to the result.
In terms of the result, of course, I'm not shying away from how disappointing the result is. I went to Caerphilly, as you can imagine. It's not too far from where I'm speaking to you from this morning here in Torfaen on a number of occasions. And what I found on the doorsteps was a real desire for more change, a frustration about the pace of change that was coming through to me very strongly when I was speaking to people. I think that's been reflected in the result. But by-elections are always difficult for incumbent parties, and this one was certainly no different.
Now then, let's talk about European leaders, shall we? Arriving in London for the Coalition of the Willing meeting today, discussing support for Ukraine. The PM hosting leaders from Denmark, the Netherlands and NATO. The Ukrainian president also expected to attend. Let's discuss this further with Amanda, who joins us. And Amanda, I was just looking for the direct quote from one of the Ukrainian MPs who we spoke to a little earlier this morning, who talked about the fact that from his perspective, it was the coalition of the talking. He wants to see more action from this bloc. Will he?
Well, that's a good question, isn't it? I think we've had so many of these meetings now, of these grouping of Western leaders set up months and months ago now by Sir Keir Starmer and President Macron, initially with the idea of trying to set up a kind of security force to help keep the peace and defend Ukrainian interests in the event of a ceasefire agreement with the Russians. Now, of course, no such agreement is forthcoming, and I think it's quite interesting that the release that we've had from Downing Street this morning ahead of the meeting really isn't talking about any future peace deal. It's talking about tightening the screws on Putin, putting pressure on the Russians and helping the Ukrainians keep ongoing with their fight over the winter. And the key message from Sir Keir Starmer, it seems to be at this meeting, will be trying to get more other European countries to donate long-range missiles, government pointing to the fact that UK Storm Shadow missiles were used successfully by the Ukrainians just this week to attack a chemical plant in Russia. Of course, we know this has been a big focus for President Zelensky recently. He was hoping that the US would sell their Tomahawk cruise missiles. That seems like Donald Donald Trump's kind of pulled back from that. But as well as that focus, the other issue is going to be about trying to release Russian frozen assets to be given to the Ukrainians in the form of loans, potentially, to help fund the ongoing defence of Ukraine. Now, that's something that President Zelensky was talking to Europeans about yesterday, hoping for a bit of a breakthrough on that at a summit. That, again, hasn't quite got over the line with concerns about some of the legal issues surrounding that. But the EU has agreed to help offer more funding for the ongoing financial issues facing Ukraine because of the war. So I think that is a bit of a diplomatic win. Obviously, we saw this week as well President Trump issuing sanctions against the Russians for the first time. So I think they're really trying to keep that momentum going. The meeting will be in Downing Street, first of all, between Sir Keir Starmer and President Zelensky. Then they'll be going to the Foreign Office to see the leaders of NATO and the Prime Ministers of Denmark and the Netherlands before taking part in a virtual call with these 20 other leaders later on today.
Amanda, absolute pleasure. Thank you so much. Just a reminder as well, plenty more as ever on the Politics Hub blog, on the Sky News website and app. All of the day's political headlines, making column inches there too, so you can get it on your smartphone or tablet whenever you need to. Let's bring up to speed some of the day's other headlines. Donald Trump says he's ending trade talks with Canada. It's over TV adverts. The recent ads protest US tariffs and have been slammed on the president's social media as egregious behaviour. The advertisement features an excerpt from former US President Ronald Reagan. His foundation says they're reviewing legal options into the matter. Significant challenges remain in how police tackle child sexual exploitation and grooming gangs, according to a Watchdog. The report said issues over data accuracy and national coordination could weaken policing response. It comes as 5 abuse survivors tell the Prime Minister they will only continue working with the grooming gangs inquiry if Jess Phillips remains as safeguarding minister, despite calls from 4 other survivors for her to quit. 2 men have been charged in connection with an arson attack on Peacehaven Mosque in East Sussex. No one injured in the fire on the 4th of October, but there was damage to a building and a nearby car. 38-year-old Ricky Ryder and 34-year-old Jack Slowey will appear in court later today. The annual Power List is celebrating its 20th anniversary, acknowledging the achievements of the most influential people of African, African-Caribbean and African-American heritage here in the UK. And this year, making #1 spot is Afua Che, the Bank of England's Chief Financial Officer and Executive Director, who told me why the Power List is so important.
What we've seen throughout history is that sometimes the contributions of ethnic minority talent or black leaders are not always recorded, and so they get forgotten and sometimes get lost. And so the Power List is fantastic because it actually showcases all of that talent and it allows people to create vision and it establishes a legacy so that people can say, yes, it's possible, let me go for it.
Thomas is here. Afua, at one point, had a balance sheet of £1 trillion to manage, which is just remarkable. Also remarkable is the story you're here to talk to us about. It's just potentially unlocking the door to great strides in health.
Yes, this could be groundbreaking for people with multiple sclerosis. They've just started a trial of a treatment that tries to reset the immune system, trying to correct the fault that underlies the disease. And doctors are hopeful that it could slow or even stop the progress of the disease. Our cameras were given exclusive access to see the first patient receiving the treatment.
OK, I'll start.
Every day, Emily wakes up unsure whether she'll be able to stand. She has multiple sclerosis. 3 times she's had relapses that meant she was unable to move her legs. And with her dad now in a wheelchair, also because of MS, she jumped at the chance to be the first person in the UK to test a new treatment that could slow or even stop the disease. And it uses her own cells that have been tweaked in the lab.
The thought of being in a wheelchair and not being able to chase after my children or not being able to walk up and down the stairs every day is something that I want to avoid at all costs. So I'm kind of subjecting myself to this. But I know in the long run, I want to stop it before it has a chance to stop me.
Multiple sclerosis is caused by rogue cells in the immune system turning on the body, attacking the protective coating of nerves in the brain and spinal cord and causing blurred vision or other disabling relapses. But doctors at University College London hospitals are leading a new trial of CAR T-cell therapy. They removed some of Emily's blood, then isolated some of her killer T-cells, which are normally part of the body's immune defences against disease. These were genetically modified in the lab, weaponising them to attack the rogue B cells instead. Now they're being infused back into Emily. The hope is they'll wipe them out, preventing further damage to the nerves. The doctor behind the treatment says it's one of the most significant developments in her clinical lifetime.
If we can intervene with something that can induce an immune reset, which is what we think this therapy has the capacity to do, it essentially reaches deeply into all the areas of the body where the disease-causing cells are, eradicates them, and then it's almost like flicking a switch and you get the recovery of just normal B cells.
CAR T-cell therapy is already successfully used in some aggressive blood cancers, and there are promising results in treating a disease called lupus, which, like MS, is caused by rogue cells in the immune system.
There will be just 18 patients in this first global trial. More studies will be needed, and it's far too soon to be calling this a potential cure. But doctors are optimistic that if all goes well, it could stop MS in its tracks.
Emily is a biology teacher. She understands that there are potential risks with an experimental treatment, but she's convinced by the science that underpins it.
What's my options here? I could just let this disease take over and we could wait and see, and I might be lucky and nothing happened to me, or I might have a massive relapse next week and never be able to walk again. Are we willing to take that chance? And I think we've come to the conclusion that no, we're not willing to take that chance, and that we have to trust science and trust medicine to kind of do its job.
There are 150,000 people with MS in the UK. Treatments are improving, but doctors say a one-off therapy that targets the underlying cause of the disease could be a game changer. Thomas Moore, Sky News at the University College London hospitals.
Every time we've played your report through breakfast, you and I have spent the majority of it talking about the incredible advancements of science and medicine and just how it's leaps and bounds, it feels, and this is just another one of them.
Yes, and I think it's really interesting that with both cancer and these autoimmune diseases, it's more we understand about the immune system, how the body in cancer doesn't quite recognise that there's a problem, but in an autoimmune disease begins to turn against itself, and working out what's going wrong, what cells are involved is really pushing doctors towards trying something new, trying to get to the heart of the disease, and that's what's so exciting here. But they're going very cautiously, making sure that there are no side effects. When they're dealing with the immune system, you can have quite toxic effects, and that's why they're looking at a small number of patients to start with before expanding it and looking to test the effectiveness properly, and that would be key to rolling it out clinically too.
Really appreciate it, Thomas Moore. Good to have you with us. Still to come on The Breakfast Show, 9:18 on a Friday morning. We're speaking to the Reform Party about their coming second in the Caerphilly by-election.
People want intelligent leaders, but it can be done in a less buttoned-up way.
Have a conversation in the same way that people do at home. Sophie is the best in the business.
If politicians are not answering the question, I'm not going to let them get away with that. This is my interview. Look, this is ridiculous. And there is nobody better to cut through the noise than Wilf.
You did say there wouldn't be further tax hikes. You can no longer make that promise. Mornings with Ridge and Frost. I literally can't wait to get going.
Play it cool, Wilf. Play it cool.
I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories.
This is insane.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first.
I'm Dominic Waghorn, Sky's International Affairs Editor, covering a world that seems to be unravelling.
It's not his country, it's ours.
Sky News, the full story first, free wherever you get your news. It's half an hour now past the deadline that Hamas issued, and we've now seen a third barrage of rockets coming in.
Now then, Russia has brushed off US sanctions against its two biggest oil companies, saying they won't affect the Russian economy. President Trump announced the move earlier this week as he tries to pressure Moscow into agreeing a ceasefire in Ukraine. Joining us now, James Nixie, an independent Russia analyst. Good to have you with us, James. Appreciate you sharing your time on a Friday. Russia will, of course, brush it off. That's what they're going to say. But this is going to bite, surely.
Surely indeed. And in fact, even Vladimir Putin has said, not that we should take his word for most things, has said that this will incur some losses on Russia. But to sanction, to forbid from trading any interaction with two of Russia's largest oil producers will do more than throw grit in the machine, as sanctions are generally claimed to do so. This will hurt. More than a third of Russia's overall GDP does come from energy revenues, and although this won't stop it completely, it will hinder operations to a considerable extent, and this therefore will affect its ability to prosecute its war in Ukraine.
Give us a sense of context here, if you will, because we're on the 19th round of EU sanctions, and we don't talk about those in quite so full-throated terms. What sets these two oil firms in the United States aside from what the EU's been doing?
Yeah, that's a good question. The EU has been consistent and has steadily ramped up sanctions every few months since the second invasion of Ukraine began in 2022, but it's only done so very gradually. In fact, to the extent that, so gradually means that the Russians have learned to adapt to these gradual increments, using import substitution, that is producing things of its own accord indigenously, or purchasing items from elsewhere. So the US under Donald Trump in his second term has been very different. Trump has been so far all talk and no action until now. This is remarkable by the fact that it is the first actual physical, if you like, action that Donald Trump has taken against Russia. He has been known to rhetorically let fly from time to time, and obviously has been contradictory in many of his statements. But this is the first actual as the Russians say, unfriendly act that has been inflicted, if you will, upon Russia. So this is a first in many ways.
Where else could the world go with this? I'm thinking of talks of freezing Russia out of banking systems, for example, or other mechanisms like that connect it to the rest of the world and to trading. Where else could the US go if it wanted to?
There's plenty we can still do and should do, in fact, if we wish to protect European security and save Ukraine. But it is important to remember that no single action will win this war for Ukraine, will defeat Russia. But cumulatively, taken together, multiple actions can actually force Russia into something like a retreat. So, to answer your question specifically, if you used the immobilized Russian assets held largely in the state of Belgium, that would help. If you sent longer range missiles, enabling Ukraine to strike deeper into Russian territory, that would help. If you had more landmine defense systems, that would help to stop Russian advances on the front line. More indigenous production more production sent to Ukraine to enable it to produce its own weapons, that would help. Enforcing a no-fly zone over Ukraine, that would help. None of these issues on their own will win this for Ukraine, but cumulatively it can be done.
Is there a bit of a challenge from a Western perspective that with Putin having such an iron grip on communication and the narrative domestically inside Russia, that he can point to any issue almost and go, well, look, it's the result of the sanctions, it's the result of what the West is doing to us. This is not me that's triggered this. This is Washington, this is London, this is Paris or Brussels. Is there ever a sense that leaders, governments can kind of weaponise being the recipients of sanctions kind of for their own benefit to some degree?
He can, and he does. And you're right about his grip on Russian society and its elite. The appeal to a flag, the appeal to the rightness of what Russia is doing, in Russia's words, beating Nazism in Ukraine, is an appealing piece of propaganda which many Russians suck up. Not all, of course. Russia is no monolith, but I'm afraid we are seeing an increase in support for Russia in these difficult times for Russia. So the more Russia suffers in some ways, to your question, I guess, then the more support Putin is likely to have. That's not necessarily an argument for stopping, of course, but it does mean that politically, Vladimir Putin is probably as secure as he has ever been in 25 years of his presidency right now.
Good to have you with us. James Nixie there, independent Russia analyst. Appreciate your time. Thank you so much. Plenty more news to come, but now time for some sport.
Yes, Dyche has started. Sean Dyche started last night. Good start as well. First European win at the City Ground for 30 years. First clean sheet in 21 matches. So all in all, there's lots of good books in that live, weren't there? There was just so many books. Well, he played it by the book last night. Well,
Let's see what you did there.
Goals to come. Really busy night in the Europa League. We'll show you the misses as well. Aston Villa have a moment to forget from the penalty spots. This is 2 for Crystal Palace. Wasn't a great night as well for the Rangers manager, the new Rangers manager, Donny Roll. He apologised to the travelling fans after losing 3-0 in Norway. And the race heats up, quite literally, in Formula One, as both McLaren drivers try not to crash into each other at this weekend's Mexican Grand Prix.
Very good morning to you. Watching Breakfast on Sky News. These are the top stories today. Plaid Cymru have won the by-election seat in the Senedd of Caerphilly. For the first time ever, the results saw the Welsh Nationalist Party oust Labour from a traditional stronghold in South Wales and fend off a challenge from Reform. A meeting of the Coalition of the Willing will discuss support for Ukraine and sanctions for Russia. Today, Sir Keir Starmer hosting leaders from Denmark, the Netherlands and NATO. Volodymyr Zelensky also expected to attend. President Trump has said he is immediately ending all trade negotiations with Canada. The move in response to TV ads, which were critical of tariffs. Trump described it as egregious behaviour. And a groundbreaking treatment which could halt the progress of multiple sclerosis and potentially lead to a cure is being used in the UK for the first time. The treatment known as CAR-T therapy is already used to fight aggressive forms of blood cancer. Let's return to that by-election in Caerphilly. Like I said, Plaid achieving a historic victory, winning the seat from Labour, who've held it since it was created. Let's just bring up to speed on the results. Plaid's candidate, Lindsay Whittle, won the seat with a record 47% of the vote, a swing of 27% from Labour. Reform second, achieving nearly 36% of that vote. Labour's Richard Tunnicliffe, a distant third, 11%, a disastrous night for the Labour Party, trailing even further behind the Conservatives and the Greens. Let's get reaction from Reform. Joining us is the party chairman, Dr David Bull. David, good to have you with us.
A very good morning to you.
I guess a bit of a bittersweet night, because you would have liked to have won it.
Yeah, of course, absolutely. We are, of course, slightly disappointed by that, but you also have to look at what an extraordinary result it is for us, because when we were looking back at 4 years ago, we were polling at 1.7%. We're now polling, and we got 36% last night this morning. That is a meteoric rise, and actually, I think that's pretty unprecedented in modern British politics. So I'm delighted by that result, but what was interesting about this was it was very much a two-horse race between Plaid and us. Clearly, the voters are saying we want an end to the two-party political system, the Tories and Labour. Labour went down to 11%. That is disastrous for Labour. The Tories kicked off the field entirely at 2%. And we are seeing that mirrored around the country. 2 days ago, I was in Liverpool, again, a very strong, tribally, traditionally Labour seat, which polled in 2017 at 84% to Labour. That has collapsed to 42% now. Since Keir Starmer took over, they've dropped 20%. So the reason I'm telling you that story is it's not just Wales, actually. It's in Scotland. We're seeing it around England as well. I think also you have to bear in mind that the by-election is slightly different. People vote slightly differently in by-elections to a general election, and there was also tactical voting involved as well.
All of that considered, you were ahead in the polls.
Yes.
And there's footage of Nigel Farage saying we're ahead in the polls. There's footage of him going 4 times. You had 13 teams out on polling day drumming up support. And you didn't turn that polling into an election victory. So what went wrong? Where was the gap?
Well, campaigning is always difficult. I actually think the problem for us was the MRP poll, which was released some 2-3 days ago. It showed us on 42%, Plaid on 38%, and it changed some people's minds. I've heard tales from Lib Dem supporters, even Tories, actually, voting tactically for Plaid to keep us out.
How does that feel?
I mean, obviously, it's the cut and thrust of politics, isn't it? Of course, I'm disappointed.
Do you take it personally that people are tactically voting so that they don't have reform because they don't like what you stand for?
You can't take things personally in politics. I think the fact is, actually, I'm very bullish.
But politics is all about personality.
Well, it is, but I'm very bullish, upbeat about the whole thing. If you look, actually, at where we are, you know, when I was deputy leader, we got 2-3%. We're now polling at 33% 2 weeks ago. Now, the latest polling is at 36%. If there was a general election tomorrow, we'd win 445 seats. We'd have a majority of some 258. There is no doubt that something is happening in the United Kingdom. Wales generally polls for us now at 28%. That is amazing. It's extraordinary. Scotland, 22%. Here, 36% in England.
So lots of positive polling, yeah. and Nigel Farage points at the fact that you lead polls so frequently now, and you have now controlled 10 councils. We do need to touch on Kent, because it's sure. not been a breezy walk for you there, has it? What's going wrong in Kent? Because you're having to
keep saying going wrong.
Well, look, suspending and removing the whip from councillors is not going right, is it?
No. Well, so that was an internal meeting that was leaked, which is unacceptable. But you will know that if you have a private meeting, it will be a robust discussion in that meeting. I think Lyndon Kencaran is doing an amazing job. And in fact, what I saw from that footage was a forceful leader who is very keen to ensure that she gets value for money for tax. taxpayers. The fact is that actually we've inherited a terrible situation. The Doge there is trying to find efficiency savings, cost-cutting in Kent. We are trying not to put council tax up.
But it's being mooted.
But we haven't made any decisions on the level of council tax.
So you're not committing one way or the other?
No.
But you stand for cutting costs and making life more affordable for people.
Of course, but you've also got to... You can only play with the toys you've been given. So actually, when you inherit an economic mess, we will make efficiency savings. One of the biggest problems we have is social care, and the way we treat elderly people in this country is disgraceful. Now, we can't square that circle until we actually find a better system. So Kent is a very important council for us, as is Lancashire, as are the other ones. And actually, the people running these councils are doing the job to the best of their ability, and I applaud them.
My final thought, we're talking lots kind of about local politics. Nigel Farage, key to campaigning for your party, yes, I think it's fair to say, goes up 4 times to Caerphilly. Where did he go when the results were announced? Because lots of people are going, well, where's Nigel? Nigel's there when you're on the front foot. But people are saying, well, it doesn't seem to be there when you don't get a successful
I don't know. I wasn't there. I don't keep his diary. I was in Liverpool. I was in Walsall last night. I came back to London. I don't know is the honest answer. But we were on the ground. We had supporters, members and party activists on the ground. You'll have to ask Nigel.
We will do. David Bulger to have you with us. Talking about being on the ground, John Craig is on the ground for us, our chief political correspondent in Caerphilly. John, Plaid celebrating their election win behind you right now.
Yes, you come to us at a very good moment because, all being well, we are going to see the winning candidate here. That was Lindsay Whittle, who won by just under 4,000 votes, and the leader of Plaid Cymru, that is Reen ap Iorwerth. You can see here we are, as you can see, outside the historic Caerphilly Castle. Behind me are Plaid Cymru activists, supporters, a few Senedd members as well, and I imagine we are going to hear from Mr Whittle, the new Senedd member for Caerphilly. Remember, Caerphilly sent Labour MPs to Westminster for over 100 years, sent Assembly members, Senedd members since devolution started in 1999. A Labour stronghold, just as this was a stronghold during the English Civil War in the 17th century, although it was captured by Oliver Cromwell. Well, Nigel Farage hoped to capture Caerphilly, came close but didn't quite succeed. I thought it was interesting listening to David Bull. I don't think I've ever heard anybody, a politician, complain about being leading in the opinion polls before. He seemed to suggest that they were victims because there was a poll put them at 42% and Plaid Cymru at 38%. Yes, absolutely true, there was tactical voting. That's why the Labour vote plunged. That's why the Tories, Lib Dems and Greens got absolutely derisory votes. But here in the sunshine in Caerphilly, we are, all being well, about to hear from the winning candidate and the party leader. What happened last night was that Reform UK went into the count confident of winning. Nigel Farage was campaigning on polling day, his 3rd visit to the constituency. But as the evening wore on, the Plaid Cymru supporters got more and more confident. In fact, Mr Whittle was pretty jaunty and upbeat when he arrived just before the poll closed, actually. And we thought Nigel Farage would turn up at the count, as he often does when he expects his party to win, but he didn't. And the Reform UK candidate, that's Claire Powell, was left, I wouldn't say on his own, but certainly without high-powered support from the likes of Mr Farage or any of the senior Reform UK people. I think I heard a cheer there, so which possibly means that the winning duo, if you like, are coming. No, not yet. You can see all these people waiting. There is obviously lots of journalists, reporters, TV crews, and I imagine we will hear some words. I'm just looking to see if I can see. No, he's not here yet. This was a by-election caused by the death of the sitting Labour member of the Senedd back in August. In his victory speech, it was about 2 in the morning, Mr Mr Whittle got quite emotional when he paid a very generous and warm tribute to his Labour predecessor, and then he talked about how the whole of Wales needed to take notice of what had happened here, and he said he was so excited. He said his visit was better than scoring the winning try in the Rugby World Cup for Wales against Australia. So any second now, I think we will see Mr Whittle and his party leader. They're coming up some steps actually from the road, and no, they're not here yet. But this is, I suppose we call this a victory lap, don't we, really, when a party wins a by-election. We've seen it with lots of parties, a lot of Labour victories, Lib Dem victories, and now a Plaid Cymru victory. So I thought we would have seen the winner. I'm told he's coming, if you can bear with us for a minute or two. Sorry about the delay. And this is very slow progress. No, it wasn't. I don't know what's happening. My colleague Hannah Woodward is closer to where Mr Whittle, and I'm getting a thumbs up from Hannah Woodward, our producer here. I think means that they are we're about to arrive. And here they come. They've broken out into a trot, or is that some of the activists? No, that's some of the Plaid Cymru team. And we're just trying to get a bit nearer now to see if we can see them arriving. Here they come. Now there's Mr Whittle in the red jacket. He was wearing that last night at the count. I think it's his lucky jacket. And that's Reen Ap Iorwerth, the Plaid Cymru leader, jubilant this morning. Big success for him. And you can hear the cheers now of the activists. And here's Mr Whittle, 72 years old. He told Sky News overnight he'd fought to get elected here in Caerphilly 13 times before last night. Big hug for the winning candidate from the party leader. Hugs all round. So, clasping of hands.
Very good morning, everybody. I think it's quite emotional for all of us being here today. It's been quite a journey. This is a historic result for Caerphilly and the constituency that means so much to you. It's a historic result for Plaid Cymru, one of the big victories in the history of our party. But it's massively historic in terms of the journey that Wales is on as a nation, and says so much about the opportunity that faces us as a nation as we head into the Welsh general election in just 6 months' time. Mae'r cyfle hwn wedi cael ei grisialu yma yng Nghaerffili yn ystod yr etholiad yma, a'r gobaith mae pobl yn ei weld ym Plaid Cymru fel y blaid sy'n gallu arwain llywodraeth nesa Cymru. We know how hard we've worked for this victory, and we recognise how much faith and how much trust the people of Caerphilly have put in you, Lindsay, and in Plaid Cymru, to be their champions and to be a champion for their community. And I know that through your work and through the work of everybody here, we will show that we will do everything, always, for the people of this community, as we will do always for the people of Wales, wherever they are. Lindsay, llongyfarchiadau. Congratulations to everybody.
Say a few words, Lindsay.
I'll say a few words. It seems just like yesterday, as a 15-year-old schoolboy, I was standing with the crowds as Phil Williams tried to put the Phil in Caerphilly and tried to create history. Well, yesterday, the people of Caerphilly created their own history. Yeah. And we put Caerphilly on the map firmly. I have received messages of goodwill, not only from all corners of Wales, but from Scotland, Can you believe France? Can you believe Australia, Spain and Canada? And that is a mark of how important yesterday was to Wales and the world, because now I believe the world is watching Wales and watching an emerging nation start to control our lives again. What was the famous phrase that no one likes me using, especially our comms people? They've all gone pale, but it's grab your brains by the throat and take control of your lives again. And that's the message, and I will work like a Trojan for every single man, woman and child in this constituency, and a huge honour it is for me. I am genuinely humbled. I'm a council house boy from the council estate there, and I'm proud to call this home. Diolch yn fawr.
So an emotional speech there again from Mr. Whittle. He got emotional when he won in the early hours of this morning, and I'm a council house boy, he said, and he had messages from all over the world, France, Australia, he said.
Yes, young people involved, that was really important as well. So many young people, and they're our future, and that heartens me as an almost young person myself.
So there we have almost young, 72-year-old Mr. Whittle, who has won this election at the 14th attempt, he told Sky News in the early hours of this morning. With that, back to you in the studio.
John Craig there in Caerphilly for us. Thank you so much. Plenty more on the Politics Hub blog, on the Sky News website and app. You can get it on your phone. Plenty more sport to come as well, Jackie.
Yes, there is. Just want to say before we do the sport, happy birthday to Wayne Rooney.
Happy birthday, Wayne.
He's 40 today, which is really hard to wrap your head around, because in my mind he's...
Still 17.
Yeah.
Ben.
And a great night for Forest last night. First win in Europe for 30 years, first clean sheet in 21 matches. Dyche ball has started, and it was a really good start.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report. Sky Business sponsors this report.
No, Jackie, thank you. From actress to author, Reese Witherspoon, who runs one of the world's most successful book clubs, has now turned her hand to writing a novel herself. It's a thriller co-written with Harlan Gobin and called Gone Before Goodbye. It features a talented surgeon who finds themselves caught up in a deadly conspiracy. Our arts entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer caught up with the pair and began by asking how topping the New York Times bestseller list compares to winning an Oscar.
It feels really deeply personal because usually as an actor, I walk into other people's worlds and it's already set up and I can bring my part. But this was like creating the whole world with Harlan, and just from everything beginning to end feels very personal.
We live in an age where celebrities have lots of ghost-written books out there.
I said to her for day one, it's only going to be you and me. There's no third person in here. I don't do that. No note-taking, no third person. So it's just every word you see comes from Reese and me.
He set the tone of all of it. He was like, if we're going to do this, it's going to be at a really high level because people are going to expect, they expect a lot from him, they expect a lot from me. So our bar was really high, but I think we were also excited by the challenge.
I was a little wary. I don't co-write novels. I don't collaborate on novels. But when she made the pitch and started talking about it, I was like, dang, that's good. We can do something with that. I said to her in the beginning, a novel's like a sausage. You might like the final taste. You don't want to see how it was made. Reese got to see the full sausage getting made here.
Over the course of your career, have people sort of tried to say, just do the acting, stay in your lane? Has it been do you think you could have done this 10 years ago?
No. First of all, I didn't have an idea 10 years. This is the only idea I've ever had for a book ever, my whole life. Also, yeah, I mean, people want you to stay in your lane. People want you to pick a lane. But as a creative person, I think it's impossible to just choose one kind of life. And also, I'd like to say, like, creativity is infinite. Who I was as a creative person when I was 20 is very different from the person I am now at 49.
AI is a character in this book as well, or features in this book. Can I ask, I mean, you've been so prolific in the amount of novels that you have put out there. Is that frightening for you at the moment, that the computers could be sort of coming up with how to write in a Harlan Gobin style?
I don't know if I don't like it, obviously. I don't think it's frightening. And I just think I take it as a challenge. I'm just going to keep up in my game. So try to keep up with me.
We live in a sort of age where we all can get hugely frustrated with social media, and it can seem like a sort of giant negative sometimes because it's infiltrating all parts of our lives. But I wondered whether sort of you felt the success of your book club, it can also bring create wonderful communities as well.
When I started the book club, I think in 2015, it's really evolved. Over the past 9-10 years. It used to be that, social media was this sort of, frivolous thing that people occasionally looked at. Now it's become quite an investment of people's time. And also maybe, we're seeing so much about how it affects your psyche. And so I think we've been thinking about how do you have this great community meet in real life? That's the most important thing to me, I think, is community where you can find it. Because we're all hungry for it right now.
We all know we should put our phone down more. We all know we should stop scrolling. We all know at night when we read a novel, we feel better, we're mentally healthier, we're less stressed. Scientifically, it's been proven by the Queen's Reading Room, through brainwaves. But we all know this, and Reese and I think, both want to encourage that as much as we can.
This is the start of things to come. Will we see a second, do we think? Maybe a little pause first.
Yeah, let's see what people think of this one.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you so much.
Just discussing whether you need a book club to drink wine. No, but not at this time of day, not at 10 in the morning on a Friday. Samantha's back with all the day's top stories after this short break.
I witnessed the complete destruction of a place linked to my childhood memories.
This is insane.
I'm Yusra Al-Bagher, Sky's Africa correspondent based in Johannesburg, South Africa. I felt awe when we saw the mountain gorillas in Rwanda.
We call him the king of the jungle. This is the alpha silverback.
Sky News, get the full story first.